Chapter 1406. The Red Moon Great King looked heroic on the surface, but his heart was beating like a drum. He could only secretly pray that Yi Chen would be able to cover for him. He couldn't be the one courting death. When the other monster race members saw that someone had taken the initiative to step forward, they all breathed a sigh of relief, and gave the Red Moon Great King a thumbs up. Haha, this brother is really a man. I'm definitely going to befriend you. I also like to befriend heroes like you. It just so happens that I have some good wine that I've kept for 1,000 years. When you come back, I'll invite you to drink with me. This hero, I also have a furnace of immortal pills that I've just refined. When you come back, let's taste them together. Many monster race members had enthusiastic smiles on their faces, as if they were sending off a hero. They watched as the Red Moon Great King, Yi Chen, and the others walked towards the Xiantian array. Although they spoke enthusiastically and generously, promising all kinds of benefits, in reality, every one of them knew that this idiot would probably never return this time. As for Yi Chen and the others, they didn't care about them at all. This was because the aura that Yi Chen exuded was obviously that of a follower of the Red Moon Great King. His cultivation was only so. The Golden Lion stared fiercely at Yi Chen and the others. He seemed to feel that something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Yi Chen narrowed his eyes slightly, not allowing himself to reveal any strange expressions. They were about to enter the array. He couldn't expose himself at this time. Although Yi Chen didn't know much about this Xiantian array, when they first arrived and saw this array, Yi Chen had quietly copied everything he saw and sent it into the pocket world. The array masters would quickly crack it and find the way to break the array. The difference between the pocket world and the real world was too great. Although time passed in the real world in the blink of an eye, a long time had passed in the pocket world. The array masters also repeatedly deduced the array according to the feedback from Yi Chen's divine sense. Soon, he had some preliminary result. Because Yi Chen was still outside the array formation, his spiritual consciousness could not cover the entire Xiantian array formation. Now, these array masters could only guarantee Yi Chen's safety in the array formation. As for how to break this array formation, they would have to wait until Yi Chen entered the array formation before they could obtain more detailed information. And Xiaoxi and the Lava Dragon King followed behind Yi Chen. They weren't very nervous because they had a blind trust in Yi Chen. In their eyes, there was nothing that Yi Chen could not do in the untainted land. For example, the formation in front of them. Although it looked terrifying, there must be a reason why Yi Chen chose to enter it. They just needed to follow him. The Red Moon King's face turned ashen as his legs trembled. He really wanted to stop and turn around to ask Yi Chen what his plan was. However, Yi Chen's cold command sounded in his ears. Keep going. I'll protect your life. Therefore, the Red Moon King could only grit his teeth and rush into the Xiantian array formation. Boom! The array formation was suddenly activated. Just as everyone was about to be randomly teleported, Yi Chen moved. A giant palm made of vital qi directly grabbed the Lava Dragon King and Xiaoxi and sent them into the pocket world. Yi Chen hesitated for a moment before he also threw the frightened Red Moon King into the pocket world. Originally, Yi Chen planned to throw the Red Moon King into the Xiantian array formation and let him fend for himself. However, after thinking for a while, he decided against it. Anyway, the Red Moon King's life was now in his hands. Moreover, he had been obedient along the way. If he kept him alive, he might be useful in the future. Therefore, after Yi Chen knocked him out, he threw him into the pocket world and let the Lava Dragon King and Xiaoxi guard him together. Yi Chen's movements were very fast. It was a pity that he had just entered the array formation and was still within the range of the powerful demon race's divine sense. When they felt the changes here, they immediately changed their expressions, especially the Golden Lion King. He took a few steps forward and roared, "That kid is strange. Who knows who he is? Where did he take the Red Moon King and his followers?" Unfortunately, no one could answer him because Yi Chen was a complete stranger to them. Moreover, Yi Chen did have the aura of a demon race before, so no one doubted him. However, now it seemed that this was not the case. Some of the demon race could not help but show a look of schadenfreude because they now understood that this was a trap set up by the Golden Lion King and the other two demon gods. They wanted to use them as the vanguard and then reap the benefit. Unfortunately, they did not expect that someone would interfere. If the Golden Lion King and the others did not take action, they were afraid that the benefits would be taken by someone else first. Yi Chen also felt something. He turned around calmly and grinned at the Golden Lion King, who had lost his composure. Then, he slowly raised his middle finger and disappeared into the array formation in a flash. Even the powerful demon gods, such as the Golden Lion King, could no longer find any trace of Yi Chen. It was as if he had completely disappeared. In fact, everyone knew that Yi Chen had entered the core of the array formation. After Yi Chen disappeared, the Golden Lion gritted his teeth and asked, "That D***MN guy. He raised a finger at me. What did he mean by that?" Everyone looked at each other. How could they know what a middle finger meant? Finally, a demon king boldly replied, "It seems that this guy is provoking us." Bang! The Golden Lion King slammed his hand on the huge stone table in front of him. The stone table was suddenly smashed into pieces. The Golden Lion King was furious. He had prepared for so many difficulties, but now he was going to make a wedding dress for someone else. All the demon race were hoping that Yi Chen would directly fall in this array formation. Unfortunately, things did not go as they wished. They could only watch as Yi Chen disappeared from the range of their divine sense. Yi Chen, on the other hand, kept communicating and cooperating with the formation masters in the small world, and passed through this innate formation without any mishap. Yi Chen only felt that everything in front of him suddenly opened up and he appeared in a small valley. Across the array formation, he could still hear the roars of those unwilling demon race. The Golden Lion King was almost mad with anger. He forcibly ordered the other demon race masters to rush into the innate array formation, one after another. In an instant, blood flowed like a river and corpses were everywhere. Chapter 1407. Yi Chen turned his head to look at the connate formation that was filled with blood chi, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Let these bastards of the demon clan slowly torment themselves. He had to go treasure hunting. The valley in front of him was full of greenery, and the plants that exuded vigorous life essence flowed with red clouds. Moreover, the valley was no longer filled with spiritual chi, but with purer immortal chi. Clouds of immortal chi curled up, and colorful lights flickered. It was a scene of a paradise. Just by breathing in the air here, he felt refreshed, as if he was floating in the air. Yi Chen was more and more certain that the connate spiritual root, the gourd vine, must be in this valley. Then, Yi Chen strode into the valley. He wanted to capture the gourd vine before the demonic beasts broke through the barrier and started the battle 2 days ago. Then, even if the demon clan broke through the formation, they would not be able to do anything to him. Although Yi Chen was not a match for these demon clan members, if he wanted to leave, even if there were 3 demon immortals, they would not be able to stop him. The valley was not big, and Yi Chen's divine sense could cover the entire valley. However, Yi Chen's divine sense searched every inch of the land and every gully, but he could not find the shadow of the connate spiritual root, the gourd vine. Yi Chen's brows slowly furrowed. Could it be that the information was wrong? There was no connate spiritual root in this valley. But that was not right. If there was no connate spiritual root, how could the connate formation be explained? The connate formation must be protecting a connate treasure. Then Yi Chen's mouth suddenly curved into a smile. The so-called connate treasure had a spirit. The connate spiritual root, the gourd vine, must have used some kind of camouflage to protect itself. Therefore, ordinary divine senses could not detect its disguise. Since that was the case, they could only carefully search the entire valley. Yi Chen's speed was very fast as he carefully scouted the valley. His figure was erratic like a shadow. His fiery golden eyes carried 2 rays of spirit light. No disguise could escape his eyes. There were still many heavenly materials and earthly treasures growing in this valley. Yi Chen had a good habit of throwing them all into the small world. With Yi Chen's massive harvesting, most of the natural treasures in the entire valley had been harvested. As a result, the disguise of the natural spirit root calabash vine became a little awkward, because all the natural treasures around it that were used as decorations had all been collected by Yi Chen. The connate spirit root calabash vine had disguised itself as an ordinary vine, and a bunch of natural treasures were surrounding the ordinary vine like stars surrounding the moon. This was a little unreasonable. Yi Chen chuckled and grabbed the vine. Suddenly, there was a flash of light, and the vines started moving. They were even faster than Yi Chen as they tried to flee in all directions. Unfortunately, Yi Chen had already sealed the surrounding void. After the vine could not escape, it suddenly whipped towards Yi Chen like a snake. The vine was so fast that it could almost tear the void apart. Yi Chen did not dare to be whipped for nothing, so he quickly dodged to one side. He laughed heartily. The power displayed by the vine was undoubtedly that of the connate calabash vine. No matter how capable the vine was, it was no match for Yi Chen. It was caught by Yi Chen after a short while, and it finally revealed its original form. It was indeed a green calabash vine that was about 10 meters long. The whole calabash vine was surrounded by vigorous life essence. Yi Chen held it in his hand and felt waves of life essence nourishing his body. Yi Chen was secretly shocked. No wonder it was the famous connate spiritual root calabash vine in the eldritch world. Yi Chen remembered that in his previous life, the connate spiritual root calabash vine had borne a total of 7 gourds, which were snatched by the mighty figures in the eldritch world. First, the purple gold gourd was taken by Taishang Laojun. Second, the red cloud gourd was taken by Red Cloud Taoist. Third, the immortal slaying gourd was taken by Dong Huang Tai. Fourth, the demon summoning gourd was taken by Nuwa. Fifth, the water fire gourd was taken by Tong Tian sect leader. Sixth, the purple green gourd was taken by Haotian emperor. Seventh, the chaos gourd was taken by Yuanshi Tianzuan. But now all of this had nothing to do with them. Even the entire calabash vine had become Yi Chen's. Now, the calabash vine had not bloomed, nor did it bear the 7 gourds. Yi Chen was not in a hurry. He believed that, under his cultivation, the connate spiritual root calabash vine would definitely come into contact with the 7 gourds, just like in his previous life. Seeing the connate spiritual root calabash vine still struggling in his hand, Yi Chen smiled and took out 10,000 supreme-grade immortal stones, placing them on the ground. The connate spiritual root calabash vine shook, and its entire root was embedded in the 10,000 supreme-grade immortal stones, rapidly absorbing the energy within. In just 2 breaths of time, the 10,000 supreme-grade immortal stones had all shattered and their energy had been absorbed. The connate spiritual root calabash vine seemed to have grown another 2 inches. This time, he no longer had any resistance towards Yi Chen. Instead, he took the initiative to wrap his arms around Yi Chen's wrist like a child who had just become sensible. He gently rubbed the back of Yi Chen's hand, as if saying that he hadn't eaten enough and wanted more. Yi Chen laughed with satisfaction. With a wave of his hand, another pile of supreme-grade immortal stones was placed on the ground. This time, there were a total of 200,000 supreme-grade immortal stones. The connate spiritual root calabash vine immediately swayed its branches and leaves excitedly and pounced on the pile of supreme-grade spirit stones, enjoying the feast happily. It took a full quarter of an hour to completely absorb this pair of supreme-grade immortal stones. The connate spiritual root calabash vine seemed to have eaten its fill. It flew shakily to Yi Chen's arm, then shrank and wrapped around his wrist like a green bracelet. Yi Chen could clearly feel that the connate spiritual root calabash vine was constantly releasing vigorous life essence, which was being transmitted to his body through his wrist. Yi Chen felt that his lifespan seemed to have increased by hundreds of years. At this moment, an earth-shattering sound suddenly rang out outside the valley. Yi Chen's heart suddenly trembled. He flew up and the Godslayer also appeared in his right hand. Sensing with his enormous divine sense, he knew that the connate formation outside the valley had been broken by these monster race experts. After the Golden Lion had used high pressure to force hundreds of monster race experts to die in the connate formation, he finally found a good opportunity to break it. At the same time that Yi Chen discovered the Golden Lion, the lion also discovered Yi Chen. Immediately, he and the other two monster immortals behind him soared into the sky and closed in on Yi Chen. Behind them were hundreds of monster race experts, all of them eyeing covetously and beginning to encircle him with malicious intent. Chapter 1408. Yi Chen quickly measured the strength of both sides in an instant. He suddenly shook his right wrist, and the innate spiritual root gourd vine instantly became a long whip hundreds of feet long, enveloping the surrounding void. Crackle, crackle, crackle. Those demon clan experts who were rushing ahead stiffened and screamed. Their bodies flashed with purple lightning as they fell stiffly from the sky to the ground. In the next moment, tens of thousands of explosive talismans scattered in all directions and exploded at the same time. Rumble! The violent explosion was earth-shattering. Smoke and dust rose into the sky, and the whole valley was shaking because of the explosion. Countless rocks were shattered and trees were destroyed. A terrifying shockwave swept out in all directions. Even a super expert like Golden Lion had no choice but to retreat for the time being. The Golden Lion snorted and waved his sleeve. Immediately, the smoke and dust in the sky and the shock wave caused by the explosion were swept up into the sky by him, and the valley returned to peace. But when he looked at Jiang Bufan again, his figure had long since become indistinct and vanished without a trace. Suddenly, all the demon clan experts felt ashamed. They had been fooled today. Regardless of their sorry state, they rushed into the valley with greedy saliva dripping from the corners of their mouths and began to search for the treasure like vicious dogs. They had paid so much blood and lives to come here with great difficulty. Treasure hunting was their purpose here. But this valley had been dug full of holes by Yi Chen, and all the valuable treasures of heaven and earth had been taken away by him. When the golden-haired lion and the others saw the appearance of the valley, their hearts sank. When they thought of Yi Chen's performance, they couldn't help but guess that Yi Chen had already obtained that innate supreme treasure. Then they thought of the long whip in Yi Chen's hand, which was hundreds of feet long, and its great power. It must be the innate treasure. The Golden Lion's nose twitched twice, revealing a trace of bloodthirsty ferocity as he said, "This kid can't run away. I've already memorized his scent. There's no way he's going to steal our things. Everyone, follow me. Once we catch this kid, we'll tear him to pieces." Following which, the golden-furred lion and the other two demonic immortals joined forces and tore open the void, creating a gigantic teleportation gate. Together, they led hundreds of demonic immortals across the void and gave chase. When they reappeared, they were already hundreds of thousands of miles away. After the Golden Lion appeared, he used his divine sense to search for Yi Shiwen and frowned. "This kid is more cunning than we thought. He escaped really fast. But if he wants to escape like this, he's underestimating us." At this time, Yi Chen was standing on the peak of a high mountain. He frowned slightly and felt that the Golden Lion and other masters of the demon clan had caught up with him like maggots attached to bones. These demonic immortals must have some method to lock onto his position. Then, Yi Chen sensed that the void shook less than 10 miles away from him, and then a gigantic teleportation gate appeared. He sneered. In this case, he would play with them and see who would give up first. Therefore, Yi Chen's figure flashed and disappeared. In an instant, he appeared hundreds of thousands of miles away. The Golden Lion and the others stepped out of the void. After sensing the aura here, they immediately roared angrily. In their eyes, Yi Chen was incomparably cunning. Every time, he would be able to escape from this place calmly before they appeared. They were like old dogs being led by the nose by Yi Chen, taking them for an endless stroll in this eldritch continent. The golden-haired lion and the others were also triggered. They swore that they would capture Yi Chen no matter what. So, they went all out one after another. More than 10 hours had passed. They had crossed hundreds of millions of miles, but they were still chasing endlessly. Although the Golden Lion and the other 2 demonic immortals took turns to break through the void, it consumed a lot of their energy. What puzzled them was that Yi Chen didn't seem tired at all after rushing for such a long distance in a short time. He was still running like a dragon and a tiger. What made them even angrier was that Yi Chen deliberately waited for them several times, as if he was afraid that they would lose him. After they appeared, he would sit there and drink tea leisurely. He would give them an extremely evil smile before breaking through the void and leaving calmly. Whoosh! The Golden Lion suddenly stepped out of the void gate with red eyes. He was panting slightly and almost couldn't hold on. As expected, he was one step too late this time. Yi Chen escaped again. The golden-furred lion tried to deduce the direction Yi Chen had fled in. Just as he was about to give chase, the other Yao God beside him suddenly gave him a shove. Then, the Yao God pointed ahead in fear. The Golden Lion looked ahead in confusion. Suddenly, he shuddered. He saw that there was a plateau with lush vegetation. Spiritual chi lingered there. It was obviously a treasure land. The Golden Lion asked carefully, "Is this the territory of that person?" His companion nodded and said unwillingly, "That's right. If that kid escapes here, then he's dead for sure. It's a pity that the innate spiritual root is going to fall into that person's hands." The 3 demonic immortals whispered to each other. They all looked dispirited. Great. They had worked hard for half a day, but it was all for someone else. It felt like they had worked hard for nothing. The demonic immortals behind them didn't understand what had happened. They asked doubtfully, "Seniors, may I ask what happened? Is there something wrong in front?" The Golden Lion took a deep breath and looked coldly at them. Then he said, "That's all for today. Disperse on the spot. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Do you see the plateau in front? You must not step into it. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences." The other demonic immortals looked at each other and sighed. Even the 3 demonic immortals with the highest cultivation had voluntarily given up. What else could they say? At this time, Yi Chen had already appeared on the plateau. He was amazed by the scenery on the plateau. It was indeed very beautiful, and the spiritual chi was much more abundant than in other places. But what puzzled him was that this time, he waited for a long time. The Golden Lion and the other demonic immortals didn't chase after him. They seemed to have given up. Yi Chen couldn't help but laugh. The Golden Lion and the other demonic immortals are too weak. I planned to lead them on a 3-day chase. I didn't expect them to give up so quickly. Chapter 1409. After this chase, Yi Chen didn't know where he was anymore. So, he decided to just stroll around the highland like he was taking a stroll in the park. Surprisingly, there were very few traces of the demon clan in this plateau, which was considered outstanding in the untainted continent. Most of them were uncivilized wild beasts. As for the demon clan experts and organized demon clan tribes, there was not a single one, which was a little strange. Therefore, there were a lot of natural treasures on this plateau. However, Yi Chen, who had just obtained the innate spiritual root gourd ting, was in a very good mood, so he did not continue to collect these natural treasures. Anyway, this plateau seemed to be vast and boundless, so there were plenty of such things. Unknowingly, Yi Chen came in front of a waterfall. This waterfall fell from a high cliff like the Milky Way, falling into a pool with a rumbling sound. From time to time, there were some carps more than 10 feet long swimming in the pool. Yi Chen could not help but feel a little hungry, so he planned to catch a carp and roast it. Looking from the shore, these carps all had shiny golden scales and long whiskers on both sides of their bodies. They must taste very delicious, right? Just as Yi Chen was about to reach out his hand, a cold and sweet voice suddenly came to his ear. Who are you? How did you get here? And what do you want to do? Yi Chen's pupils suddenly constricted. He subconsciously took a step forward, turned around, and grabbed the Godslayer's handle with his right hand. The voice just now seemed to have resounded in his ears, but Yi Chen had always been very vigilant. His spiritual sense had already covered a radius of several thousand feet. Even if a mosquito passed by, it wouldn't be able to escape his perception. But just now there was clearly someone standing behind him. After Yi Chen turned around, he saw a woman in white. This woman had a cold expression and a graceful appearance. She had an extremely profound aura. When Yi Chen looked down, he saw that the lower half of this woman's body was actually that of a long snake. Yi Chen's mind turned quickly, and he suddenly realized the identity of this woman. He also understood why the demon clan experts like the Golden Lion did not dare to chase to this plateau. It turned out that this was the territory of Nuwa. This also explained why Yi Chen's spiritual sense did not discover it even though it was right in front of him. Yi Chen was also sizing up Nuwa. She should not have become a sage yet. She should still have the cultivation of a quasi-sage. Thinking of this, Yi Chen immediately cupped his fists and said, I am Yi Chen from the Great Yin Dynasty. I was chased by a group of demon clan experts. I was in the wilderness and did not know where to go. Please forgive me. Nuwa frowned slightly. She gently waved her hand and said, So it's fellow Yi Chen. Is it that group of annoying guys from the demon clan? Don't worry, fellow Taoist. You are safe here. They won't dare to chase you. Yi Chen immediately breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that Nuwa was very easy to talk to. Suddenly, Yi Chen found that Nuwa's white clothes and hands were covered with mud. This made him a little curious. With Nuwa's cultivation, if she wanted to, nothing could get close to her. So Yi Chen smiled and said, Thank you very much. But I see that fellow Taoist is dressed like this. What's the matter? If you need my help, please don't hesitate to ask. I will do my best. Nuwa sighed and said, You can't help me. My own cultivation has reached the limit. If I want to break through, I need a lot of Heavenway merit. I vaguely deduced that the Heavenway merit should be related to this mud, but I can't find the right direction. Nuwa couldn't find the direction, but Yi Chen understood. It turned out that he just happened to be in time for Nuwa to accumulate merit and become a sage in one fell swoop. Of course, Yi Chen wouldn't miss such an opportunity. If he could help Nuwa become a sage, it would definitely bring him some benefits. So Yi Chen smiled and said, Fellow Taoist, don't worry. In my hometown, there is a saying that goes, when the boat comes to the bridge, everything will be straight. Some people also say that when the water is right, the water will flow naturally. Since your opportunity to break through is in the mud, why don't you throw away your worries and have some fun? Let your heart return to nature. If you don't mind, can I play with you? A smile suddenly bloomed on Nuwa's face. She looked at Yi Chen with a friendlier look. She said with a smile, Thank you for your reminder, fellow Taoist. I was a little stubborn. Since that's the case, let's play together. Yi Chen immediately rolled up his sleeves and walked forward without any hesitation. He began to play with the mud with Nuwa. Behind the pool, there was an excellent piece of sticky soil, which was an excellent material. Nuwa's craftsmanship was obviously very good. Whatever she made, it was lifelike. She made a bird and blew on it, and the bird immediately soared into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. Although Yi Chen didn't have the magical skills of Nuwa, he still made a decent shape. By making mud, the distance between them had unknowingly shortened. Yi Chen pretended to be casual and said, Fellow Taoist, why don't we make a new species? Nuwa raised her head and said with some confusion, What kind of new species? Yi Chen said, That's right. I saw that although the birds and beasts you made were lifelike, they still lacked some spirituality. Why don't we use you and me as the blueprint and make a new kind of creature?" Nuwa thought for a moment, and her eyes became brighter and brighter. She immediately nodded and said, "That's a good idea. Let's do it according to your method." Then, Nuwa made a few little people according to the appearance of Yi Chen and herself. Then, she blew on them, and the clay figurines immediately came to life. They began to talk with each other, and then they knelt on the ground and thanked Nuwa and Yi Chen for giving them life. Nuwa was surprised. She had been making birds and beasts for a long time, and this had never happened before. This made her feel extremely satisfied. Then, she and Yi Chen continued to make up the names of the human race. In just a few hours they made up a few hundred names of the human race. There were both men and women, and each of them was tall, handsome, and full of power. Yi Chen knew that these people were the human tribe in the untainted land. At this moment Nuwa frowned and said, "The two of us are too slow. Do you have a better way?" Yi Chen had an idea. He directly handed the innate spiritual root gourd vine on his wrist to Nuwa, and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist, why don't you try this?" Nuwa was stunned at first. She took the innate spiritual root gourd vine and said in surprise, "Fellow Taoist, you are so lucky." Then she gently waved the gourd vine. Immediately, the gourd vine swept the mud, and thousands of mud dots were thrown out. When they fell to the ground, they all turned into lively human beings. Chapter 14:10. A strong sense of surprise burst out from the corners of Goddess Nuwa's eyes and brows as she said, "My fellow Taoist, this is indeed a great treasure." Then, Goddess Nuwa continued to wave the gourd in her hand. Suddenly, groups of primitive humans appeared in the square. In the blink of an eye, tens of millions of primitive humans appeared. Yi Chen did not stay idle. He found some of the smarter ones and taught them how to survive in the primitive world, such as hunting, living, fishing, logging, building houses, and other skills. Then, these primitive humans passed down these skills by word of mouth. When Goddess Nuwa finished creating humans, these tens of millions of people knelt on the ground at the same time and shouted respectfully, "Thank you, Holy Mother and Holy Father, for giving us life." Goddess Nviwa and Yi Chen stood side by side in the sky. Yi Chen had a smile on his face. He did not expect that he would help Goddess Nviwa complete the great task of creating a human. He was even honored as the Holy Father. At this moment, countless five-colored auspicious clouds suddenly condensed in the sky. Moreover, immortal music was faintly heard. Two five-colored divine lights descended from the sky and landed on the heads of Nuwa and Yi Chen respectively. Of course, Nuwa's divine light was larger than the others. The moment the colorful divine light entered his body, Yi Chen felt that his soul was clear. This was a merit from heaven. With a wisp of merit in his body, Yi Chen would have divine help in his cultivation in the future. It would be of great help especially when he broke through to the sage realm. Nuwa, on the other hand, smiled. Yi Chen said, "My friend, now that I've sensed the opportunity to make a breakthrough, I'm going to go into seclusion. Please do as you wish. There should be no one on the Yuxiong Plateau that can threaten you." Yi Chen laughed and cupped his fist. "Then I wish you to become a sage realm soon." Goddess Nuwa turned into a beam of flowing light and disappeared. At this moment, a clap of thunder sounded in the sky. The thunder rumbled and resounded in the world channel. System announcement. Congratulations to player Yi Chen for successfully helping Nuwa complete the storyline of creating humans. The great desolate Aeon's human race revered him as the Holy Father. The player is rewarded with a strand of chi of beneficence. Players, please continue to work hard. System announcement. Due to the appearance of the primordial humans, the regional restrictions on players have been lifted. All players are free to explore the primordial world. The two world announcements were broadcasted 3 times in the World Channel. All the players were deeply shocked. Can anyone explain to me why Yi Chen is helping Nuwa create humans? Why does it sound so weird? How did a man and a woman create a human? Previous poster, can you not be so filthy? It's definitely not what you think it is. Yi Chen must have given Nuwa some help when she was creating humans. You guys don't have to explain. This kind of thing will only make things worse. Let's focus on the removal of the regional restrictions. Does that mean we can leave this area and go wherever we want? That's right. That should be the case. I've ascended for a few months, but I've been locked up here and can't get out. This is great. The sky is high and the sea is wide. The treasures of the primordial world. Here I come. Haha, I can't wait any longer. I'm so anxious when I hear that Yi Chen is fishing for good things in the primordial world. If I'm any later, he'll snatch all the good things himself. I'm different from you guys. I've long disliked these goblins. This time, I'm going to kill them all. After the regional restrictions were lifted, the players were eager to show off their skills in the primordial world. Yi Chen glanced at the comments in the World Channel and sneered. He did not comment. These players were too idealistic and underestimated the dangers of the primordial world. When they came out and got badly injured, they would know why the heavenly axiom imposed a regional restriction on them. It was completely to protect them. Unfortunately, this protection was gone now. At this time, on the Xiong Plateau where Nuwa was, the primordial world's human race was busy in full swing. They were establishing their own clans and tribes. According to the basic life skills that Yi Chen had taught them, they were building houses, making tools, and forming teams to hunt. Yi Chen covered these tribes with his divine sense. Normally, he would not take the initiative to interfere with the development of the primordial world's human race. Only when these primordial world's human race encountered an irresistible force would he suddenly appear and help them through the crisis. Therefore, these primordial world's human race respected Yi Chen even more. These primordial world's human race were created by Nuwa. However, when Nuwa went into seclusion, Yi Chen often appeared among them. Therefore, his name was even more famous than Nuwa's. In the hearts of these primordial world's human race, Yi Chen was a well-deserved Holy Father. Many tribes even built statues of Yi Chen and worshipped them all day long. Yi Chen keenly found that when these primordial world's human race worshipped him devoutly, there were wisps of faith on these statues. These wisps of faith were transmitted directly to Yi Chen's body through the void. However, these wisps of faith were so weak that he could not feel any change at all. Therefore, Yi Chen did not pay much attention to them. Yi Chen lowered his head and glanced at the primordial spiritual root calabash ting on his wrist. Then, he nodded with satisfaction. It was because of this primordial spiritual root that he had obtained such a great opportunity. After being fed by Yi Chen during this period of time, the primordial spiritual root calabash ting had grown to hundreds of feet long. When it was used to make weapons, its power was even greater. Due to Nuwa's protection, the experts of the demon race did not dare to enter the Yuxiong Plateau. This also allowed the primordial world's human race to obtain the most precious period of development. During the process of fighting with the demon beasts, these primordial world's human race were also constantly growing. Yi Chen found that these primordial world's human race had a great advantage. An adult man could easily carry a 10,000-kilogram boulder. They could walk as fast as flying and kill the beasts with their bare hand. Yi Chen measured their fighting strength and found that these primordial world's human race, who had not undergone any cultivation, were actually comparable to a Nirvana realm expert. This made Yi Chen, who originally wanted to teach them some cultivation methods, give up the idea. These primordial world's human race had their own opportunities. It was better not to do anything superfluous. Under the protection of Nuwa and Yi Chen, these primordial world's human race developed steadily. However, the players who had ascended from the lower realm were not so lucky. As soon as the earth barrier that restricted them disappeared, These players could not wait to leave the place where they had been trapped for several months. However, the reality was much crueler than they had imagined. What greeted them was not a land of natural treasures and supreme-grade immortal stones that could be obtained anywhere. Instead, they were greeted with danger everywhere. The experts of the demon race, who had been waiting outside for a long time, immediately moved out like sharks that had smelled blood. Chapter 14:11. In just one day, thousands of players were slaughtered by the demon clan and became food for the demon clan masters. The world channel was filled with cries and screams. After all, every player only had 10 lives. Once these 10 lives were over, their original bodies in the real world would also completely disappear. This was just the beginning. The next day, tens of thousands of players were killed by the demon clan masters. There were even some demons who had broken into the habitat of these players in groups, and were killed until rivers of blood flowed. Some players were even killed several times in 3 days. Now the players understood the cruelty of the eldritch world. Brothers, who's coming to save me? I'm in a cave on a hill 50 kilometers north of Yuzhou. There's a group of demon clan masters outside looking for me. Who's the hero in the Jianghu? Come and save me. Brother, you'd better pray for yourself. I've already dug a hole and buried myself in it. I've already died 6 times in 3 days. These demon race are 2F** King Savage. They're simply eating us as if we're the treasures of heaven and earth. The feeling of watching myself being eaten as food is really terrible. I've been having nightmares every day for the past few days. Our camp has been taken over by these damn demons. Now we're hiding in a tree hole in the wilderness. Oh no, why is there a snake demon here? Help! Brother upstairs, are you still alive? Stop shouting. I think he's dead. We can't go on like this. We have to think of a way. Otherwise, we'll be completely screwed. I have an idea. Let's all go to the reincarnation dynasty of Yichen. Master Yichen is doing well here. These demon clan masters won't dare to go to the reincarnation dynasty for the time being. Why? We're all players. Why should we go to him? If you want to go, go by yourselves. Anyway, I'm not going. I don't believe that I can't make a name for myself in the eldritch world. After Yi Chen learned about these players' experiences through the world channel, he just smiled coldly. He did not intervene, nor did he send troops to rescue them. After experiencing so much, Yi Chen understood the concept of being grateful to those who gained the upper hand and hated those who lost the upper hand. These players were all adult. They should take responsibility for their foolish actions. Otherwise, even if Yi Chen saved them 10,000 times, he wouldn't be able to stop them from seeking death. However, Yi Chen was still soft-hearted. Since they were all players, he sent a message to the Reincarnation Dynasty's generals to let these players enter the Eldritch world. However, they had to strictly abide by the Reincarnation Dynasty's policies. If anyone dared to disobey or destroy the Reincarnation Dynasty's good situation, they would be killed without mercy. Of course, there were also some outstanding players among these players. After going through endless slaughter and wandering back and forth between life and death, they had also quickly risen to become experts. These players joined forces and formed anti-hunting teams one after another. With their excellent equipment and tactics that were far superior to those of the goblin race, the players' anti-hunting teams were able to arrange some small-scale tactics mysteriously. Soon, the goblin race players began to suffer casualties. Under the support of the goblin race players, the players' anti-hunting teams began to grow rapidly. At the same time, the goblin race players in the Eldritch world also realized that these players were not simple. This was because some of the goblin race players found that after killing the same players twice, they could still meet these players again. It was as if they could not be killed. This caused great panic among the goblin race players. As for those goblin race players with high cultivation, such as the Golden Lion, they did not take these players seriously at all. Now, the Golden Lion was still leading the original Goblin race players outside the Yuxiong Plateau, waiting for Yi Chen to appear. They had already mobilized their players to patrol around the Yuxiong Plateau. They could not let Yi Chen escape. They were determined to get the innate spiritual root, the Gourd Ting, the Golden Lion, and the other Goblin race players. Yi Chen hovered in the air above the entrance of the Yuxiong Plateau, coldly observing the Goblin race players around him. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Are you guys looking for me?" Yi Chen slowly appeared at the entrance of the Yuxiong Plateau. Almost in an instant, the Golden Lion and the others had crossed millions of miles of void and appeared in the blink of an eye. The Golden Lion gnashed his teeth and looked at the innate spiritual root on Yi Chen's wrist, which was emitting a dazzling aura of life. He growled in a low voice, "Boy, you really didn't die in there. Hand over what you shouldn't have, and I can spare your life." Yi Chen laughed and raised the Gourd Ting, the innate spiritual root, and asked with a smile, "You want this? Sure, come and get it if you dare. You deserve to die." The golden-furred lion was enraged. His hair and beard stood on end as he took a step forward. The surrounding space started to shake violently. Unfortunately, Yi Chen was as steady as Mount Tai. He stood there motionlessly. The two Goblin race players on either side of the Golden Lion hurriedly grabbed his arms and shook their heads at him. The Golden Lion took a deep breath and looked inside with some fear. Then, he sneered and said, "Although I don't know why that person didn't kill you, you can stay in there for the rest of your life if you have the guts. If you dare to step out, I'll eat you alive with your bones." Yi Chen made a contemptuous gesture and turned back to the Yuxiong Plateau, not caring whether the Golden Lion could understand him or not. He began to secretly mobilize the team of nether mantises under his command. These nether mantises had been moving freely in an organized manner these days. One after another, demon tribes disappeared silently between heaven and earth. This was all the work of the nether mantises. However, these nether mantises were very efficient in their work. They did not leave behind any traces at all, nor did they let anyone live. Therefore, these demon experts only knew that some of the demon tribes under their command had disappeared, but they did not know who did it. Yi Chen did not let these nether mantises catch a sheep and harvest its wool. Instead, they roamed around and committed crimes. The speed of these nether mantises was very fast, and they covered tens of millions of miles. They had become the nightmare of some demon tribes. At this time, Yi Chen clearly knew that only 90,000 nether mantises were left out of the original 100,000. However, these 90,000 nether mantises were all at least 3,000 feet in size. Yi Chen immediately issued an order, ordering the 90,000 nether mantises to split into 3 teams and enter the territories of the Golden Lion and the other 2 Goblin race players to sweep through. He didn't believe that these 3 old fellows would still be able to keep their cool and continue to block this place after swallowing up their territory. Chapter 14:12. Yi Chen returned to the Yuxiong Plateau and continued to cultivate. He planned to consolidate his cultivation. Nuwa was about to become a sage, so he should hurry up. Seeing Yi Chen turn and leave, the eyes of the golden-furred lion flashed with all kinds of vicious lights. No one knew what he was thinking. The spirit energy in the Yuxiong Plateau was particularly abundant. Any place could be an immortal's cave. Yi Chen cultivated peacefully there. After cultivating for an unknown period of time, Nuwa's voice suddenly came to his ears. "Fellow Taoist, are you free? Can you do me a favor?" Yi Chen was stunned. "Fellow Taoist, please speak your mind. I will do my best. Tens of thousands of years ago, I owed the ancestral dragon a favor. Now, the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan are about to fight. One of the ancestral dragon's subordinates, the Dragon King of the East Sea, is the closest to me. He asked me for help. I am now at the critical juncture of a breakthrough, so it is inconvenient for me to come out. Fellow Taoist, can you go to the East Sea for me?" After hearing this, Yi Chen was stunned. He did not expect that the war between the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan was about to begin. No matter what, he had to participate. Maybe he could get a share of it. Then Yi Chen said with a hearty smile, "Fellow Taoist, don't worry. I will go to the East Sea and do my best to help the Dragon King of the East Sea." The Yuxiong Plateau was tens of millions of miles away from the East Sea. Yi Chen arrived in the sky above the East Sea in less than an hour. As for the war between the Dragon race and the Phoenix race, Yi Chen remembered that the East Sea was a relatively tragic battlefield in his previous life. The East Sea Dragon Palace was almost completely destroyed by the Phoenix race, and the Dragon race also suffered heavy casualties here. Since he was involved this time, he wondered if the outcome would change. At this time, the sky above the East Sea was quiet. The vanguard of the Phoenix clan had not arrived yet. However, there were already experts of the Sea clan patrolling the surface of the East Sea. Yi Chen directly commanded the 90,000 nether mantises to turn around and quickly head to the East Sea. If these nether mantises joined this large-scale battle, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. At this time, 2 Yikshaws had already discovered Yi Chen. They immediately intercepted him and said sternly, "Stop. This is the territory of the East Sea Dragon Palace. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to approach." Yi Chen snorted coldly and said, "Go and tell your Dragon King that I'm here to help on behalf of Nuwa." The Yikshaws were shocked. Of course, they had heard of Goddess Nviwa before. Their attitude immediately changed. One of the Yikshaws bowed and said politely, "Please wait for a moment. I'll go back and report to the Dragon King." Only one Yikshaw was left to accompany Yi Chen. One of them quickly disappeared into the sea and went to the East Sea Dragon Palace to report. Not long after, waves surged on the surface of the sea. A short old man with a huge turtle shell on his back appeared. After seeing Yi Chen, he immediately said with a smile, "You must be Nuwa's friend. I'm the Prime Minister Turtle of the East Sea Dragon Palace. The Dragon King is entertaining guests and has no time to come. Please come with me to the Dragon Palace for a chat." Yi Chen narrowed his eyes slightly. Without saying anything, he followed the Prime Minister Turtle and went directly into the water. With Yi Chen's current cultivation, even if he did not use the water prevention pearl, he was as free as he was on the water. Soon Yi Chen appeared outside the East Sea Dragon Palace. The East Sea Dragon Palace covered an area of about 1,000 miles. It was magnificent and majestic. All kinds of rare jade and heavenly treasures could be seen everywhere. Yi Chen could not help but sigh. The East Sea Dragon Palace was really rich. Yi Chen followed the Prime Minister Turtle into the East Sea Dragon Palace. Just as he said, the East Sea Dragon Palace was entertaining guests. It was very lively. The sound of musical instruments could be heard. Beautiful singers were dancing inside. On both sides of the hall, there were more than a dozen strong men with amazing auras sitting boldly. In the center of the East Sea Dragon Palace, a thin old man was sitting behind the dragon table. He was the Dragon King of the East Sea. The Prime Minister Turtle quickly stepped forward and whispered a few words to the Dragon King of the East Sea. After listening, the Dragon King of the East Sea sized up Yi Chen. Originally, he was very happy when he heard that Yi Chen was asked by Nuwa to help. However, when he found out that Yi Chen was only a Daluo Jinxian, he shook his head in disappointment. If a quasi-sage like Nuwa came, she might help the Dragon Palace. However, what could a mere Daluo Jinxian do in the war between the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan? Of course, he still had to put on a show. The Dragon King of the East Sea smiled and said, "Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and help the East Sea Dragon Palace. Your presence really brings light to the East Sea Dragon Palace. Please take a seat and have some good wine." Yi Chen's eyes were so sharp that he saw all the changes in the Dragon King's expression. In an instant, Yi Chen understood that the Dragon King was a little disappointed in him. However, Yi Chen did not care. Anyway, he was asked by Nuwa. If the Dragon King of the East Sea Dragon Palace did not appreciate his kindness, he naturally did not have to rush to curry favor with him. Yi Chen casually cupped his hands and sat behind a table. He casually grabbed a pot of good wine on the table and enjoyed it happily. Needless to say, the wine brewed by the East Sea Dragon Palace tasted really good. Then, Yi Chen used his fiery golden eyes to look at the big men sitting on both sides. He found that they were all experts of the sea tribe. There were deep-sea evil flood dragons, 10,000-year-old flood dragons, 9-headed snakes, and giant demonic crocodiles. These experts of the sea tribe looked at Yi Chen unkindly. One of them, whose face was red and reeked of alcohol, suddenly slammed the table and said loudly, "Dragon King, you have no confidence in us brothers. Since you asked us to help, why did you ask this gigolo to come? Are we only worthy of being on the same level as this gigolo?" The Dragon King of the East Sea's face suddenly became a little ugly. He had invited Nuwa, but he did not expect Yi Chen to come. However, he could not explain anything. At this time, only Turtle Prime Minister stood out with a smile and said, "Everyone, please calm down. Why do you have to do this? Since you are all here, you are all friends of the East Sea Dragon Palace. You are all nobles of the East Sea Dragon Palace. This time, our enemy is too strong. One more person means one more strength. When we work together to get through this disaster, the East Sea Dragon Palace will remember and thank you all." Yi Chen laughed and said, "Turtle Prime Minister, even if you treat others as friends, they may not treat you as friends. You and your Dragon King had better open your eyes. Don't treat any cat or dog as a peerless expert. It's good enough that such a person does not drag you down on the battlefield. What else can you expect from him?" Chapter 14:13. As soon as Yi Chen opened his mouth, Prime Minister Turtle knew that he was in trouble. How could he not know the tempers of these lords? It was not easy to appease them. How could he take the initiative to find fault with them? The Dragon King of the East Sea was the same. He frowned tightly and looked at Yi Chen unkindly. In his opinion, this kid was not very capable, but his temper was not small. If it were not for the sake of Nuwa, he would have driven him out long ago. At this time, the burly man had already stood up and took 2 steps forward. He stared at Yi Chen fiercely and said, "Boy, who are you calling a good-for-nothing? Say it again if you have the gut." Yi Chen said disdainfully, "I'll scold whoever speaks up. Your face is red from drinking, and you still don't admit that you're a good-for-nothing?" The burly man suddenly flew into a rage and roared crazily, "Damn bastard, how dare you mock me? I'll tear you into pieces." As he spoke, a crazy aura erupted from the burly man's body. Obviously, he was a master of the celestial demon realm. Yi Chen did not even raise his eyelids. He could easily deal with such a master with one hand. The burly man stepped out of the wine table and walked towards Yi Chen step by step. There was a bloodthirsty expression at the corner of his mouth. The others were gloating and waiting to watch a show. No one stood out to speak for Yi Chen. The Dragon King of the East Sea's face darkened. He slammed the table heavily and said in a low voice, "Enough. The enemy is right in front of us. The experts of the Phoenixes haven't arrived yet, and we're already rebelling. Wouldn't we be a joke? Fellow cultivator Yi Chen, you provoked us first. Hurry up and apologize. For my sake, let's forget about this matter." Yi Chen pointed at his own nose and tilted his head to look at the Dragon King of the East Sea. He said, "Old Dragon King, you want me to apologize to him? You must be drunk. Didn't you see that he provoked me first? I understand now. It's clear that you despise me because my cultivation is not high. Since that's the case, I won't be an eyesore here." After Yi Chen finished speaking, he stood up and wanted to leave. The East Sea Dragon King snorted coldly and did not stop him. If this brat wanted to leave, then let him go. Anyway, one more person would not make a difference. Just as Yi Chen was about to leave the Dragon Palace, A stunning girl suddenly stopped in front of Yi Chen and said with an ashamed expression, "Please wait, Your Excellency. I apologize on behalf of my father's attitude. Now that the war is imminent, please stay and give us a hand. I Xiaolongnu am begging you." Yi Chen stopped and looked at the charming little beauty in front of him. So she was the Dragon King's daughter, Xiaolongnu. She was indeed devastatingly beautiful, and her words were also very pleasant to hear. So Yi Chen asked with a smile, "Xiaolongnu, even your father doesn't take me seriously. Why do you stand out and beg me?" Xiaolongnu looked at Yi Chen timidly and said with some embarrassment, "Although I don't know much about you, I know Goddess Nuwa. You were recommended by Goddess Nuwa, so you must be extraordinary. If you leave, it will be a great loss for the East Sea Dragon Palace. So, I am shamelessly asking you to stay and help us." Yi Chen laughed and said, "What a pity. The dignified East Sea Dragon King's taste is not as good as a little girl's. Well, I will agree to stay for your sake. However, I am not sure if I can help. How about I try my best?" Xiaolongnu immediately said with joy, "That's great. Please follow me." Yi Chen followed Xiaolongnu to a side hall. It was very clean and elegant, without the annoying sound of musical instruments. It was a good place to go. "Brother Yi Chen, is the outside world fun? I have been staying in the Dragon Palace since I was born. I have never gone out." Since the introduction, Xiaolongnu affectionately called Yi Chen brother, and looked at Yi Chen with a pair of bright eyes. Yi Chen laughed and told Xiaolongnu about some of the sceneries and experiences of the untainted land, especially some of the adventures he had experienced. Xiaolongnu was intoxicated and admired Yi Chen even more. After knowing that Yi Chen had a country with hundreds of millions of people, Xiaolongnu yearned for it even more. Yi Chen was also a little drunk at this time. He looked at Xiaolongnu's budding and enchanting figure, and said with a smile, "If you are willing, I can take you to my reincarnation dynasty after the war between the Dragon Tribe and the Phoenix Tribe is over." Xiaolongnu was pleasantly surprised and hugged Yi Chen's arm and shouted, "Brother Yi Chen, are you serious? Then it's a deal. If you don't want to, you are a dog." At this moment, the dragon coffin of the East Sea suddenly shook violently. Xiaolongnu lost her balance and fell into Yi Chen's arms. Yi Chen reflexively held Xiaolongnu in his arms. The warm and fragrant scent of Ruan Yu caused Xiaolongnu's face to turn red and her entire body to heat up. Meanwhile, an earth-shattering roar came from the sea. "All the warriors of the Oceanic Tribe, gather. The bastards of the Phoenix Tribe are here." Suddenly, the red dragon's war drums thundered across the land. Xiaolongnu immediately stood up straight and said to Yi Chen with a pale face, "Big brother Yi Chen, the Phoenix Tribe is attacking us. What should we do?" Yi Chen smiled and stood up to Xiaolongnu. "Don't be afraid. I am here. Even if the East Sea Dragon Palace comes true, I will keep you safe. Now let's go up and see." So Yi Chen pulled Xiaolongnu up to the sky and flew directly from the bottom of the sea to Hu City. Countless birds flew over from the west of the East Sea. Leading them were hundreds of enormous seven-colored phoenixes. Each of these seven-colored phoenixes was hundreds of feet long. When they spread their wings, they were more than 100 feet long. They covered the sky and covered the sun, causing the light on the surface of the sea to dim significantly. The Dragon King of the East Sea led the warriors of the Oceanic Tribe to fight against the Phoenix Tribe invaders. A golden phoenix that was over 1,500 feet in size said in a cold voice, "Dragon King of the East Sea, the vanguard army of my Phoenix clan has arrived. If you know what's good for you, hurry up and surrender. Otherwise, when my army arrives, I'll definitely kill all of your dragon clan." The Dragon King of the East Sea was so angry that his face turned green. He roared, "The seven of you have gone too far. How dare you attack the East Sea Dragon Palace first? Do you really think I am a pushover? Children of the Oceanic Tribe, charge with me." Suddenly, the warriors of the Oceanic Tribe rushed up to the sky and rolled up huge waves. They fought with the warriors of the Phoenix tribe. The sky was filled with sword lights. From time to time, birds and corpses of the oceanic tribe fell from the sky into the sea. They were swept up by the waves and sank to the bottom of the sea. The Dragon King of the East Sea also turned into a 1,000-feet-long azure dragon and fought with the Golden Phoenix. The Golden Phoenix kept spitting out hot golden flames, which surrounded the Dragon King of the East Sea. The Dragon King of the East Sea was surrounded by endless green waves. After the two collided, a hot mist swept across the area. Chapter 14:14. The Dragon King of the East Sea was evenly matched with this Phoenix expert. Boom! The wind howled, and the explosion sounded like thunder from the 9 heavens. Both sides fought fiercely, and the violent explosion spread for hundreds of miles. Even the center of their battle had become a vacuum. Soon, the situation on the battlefield tilted. This was because the strength of the Phoenix's alliance army was too strong. Many of them were not weaker than the Golden Phoenix. On the East Sea Dragon Palace's side, the foreign aid invited by the Dragon King of the East Sea was no match for them. They were outnumbered and soon they were covered in scars. They instinctively wanted to escape from this flesh and blood mill. Unfortunately, they were surrounded by the Phoenix's alliance army, which was several times more than them. Not long after, their flesh and blood were flying everywhere. They were torn apart and not even their bones were left. After a large number of the top experts of the Dragon Group died, the remaining shrimp soldiers and crab generals were no match for them. They were suppressed and kept retreating. It seemed that they could not hold on any longer. After the Dragon King of the East Sea discovered the situation of the oceanic race, he roared angrily. While he was distracted, the Golden Phoenix left more than 10 deep wounds on his body. Suddenly, golden dragon blood splashed, and the Dragon King of the East Sea screamed in pain. Yi Chen and Xiao Longnu stood on a cloud not far away. They looked coldly with their hands behind their back. They did not intend to help at all. Xiao Longnu was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan after seeing so many casualties. She pulled Yi Chen's arm, and her big eyes were filled with tears. She begged, "Brother Yi Chen, please help. Otherwise, our East Sea Dragon Palace is finished." Yi Chen looked at the battlefield that was filled with shouts of killing, corpses, and broken limbs flying everywhere. He frowned and said, "You think too highly of me. I'm just a Daluo Jinxian. What's more, you saw how powerful the Phoenix's alliance army is. If I help, won't I die?" Xiao Longnu was desperate. She cried and said, "Brother Yi Chen, I'm sorry. I didn't think of this. I didn't mean to put you in danger. But the East Sea Dragon Palace has no other choice." At this moment, Yi Chen's eyebrows suddenly twitched slightly. He had received a signal from the ghost mantis. The army of ghost mantises had all rushed to the sky above the East Sea and were on standby around the battlefield. Since these nether mantises were here, things were a little different. After that, Yi Chen pretended to sigh and said, "Xiao Longnu, for your sake, I'll go all out." After saying that, Yi Chen immediately let out a long whistle and flew into the sky. Xiao Longnu looked at Yi Chen's back, and she was so touched that she almost cried. Big brother Yi Chen knew how dangerous it was, but he still went up to fight these Phoenix elite. She really didn't know how to repay him. The Godslayer had an amazing murderous aura. In the blink of an eye, it pierced through the head of a 5-colored phoenix. The God-slaying spear instantly annihilated the soul of this 5-colored phoenix, and conveniently stored her corpse into the small world. Yi Chen had heard from those who were forging that whether it was the Dragon Clan or the Phoenix Clan, their bodies were the most precious treasures. Take the Phoenix for example. Their feathers and Phoenix blood essence were the best treasures for blacksmith. In the ordinary refining process, as long as a drop of Phoenix blood essence was added, it would be a divine weapon. Moreover, these Phoenix feathers were the best material to make defensive spirit weapons. Especially, they could be used to forge defensive magic weapons for women. Not only were they light and beautiful, but their defensive power was also very strong. After Yi Chen stepped on the battlefield, he waved his hand and put away all the corpses of the Phoenix clan and the Dragon clan on the battlefield. He walked on the battlefield as if he was taking a stroll. These experts were no match for him at all. The main reason was that Yi Chen had too many trump cards. After seeing Yi Chen's powerful attack, the Dragon King of the East Sea was pleasantly surprised. He shouted, "Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist. After we defeat these damn invaders, the East Sea Dragon Palace will thank you greatly." Unexpectedly, Yi Chen didn't appreciate it at all. He snorted and said, "I didn't help because of you. If it weren't for your daughter's begging, I would have left long ago." The Dragon King of the East Sea suddenly felt embarrassed. He thought that he had misjudged Yi Chen's cultivation before. He didn't know that he was a real master. Now that all the foreign aid he relied on had been wiped out, only Yi Chen was left to shoulder the burden. The Dragon King of the East Sea didn't know what to feel. The Golden Phoenix sneered disdainfully and said, "Dragon King of the East Sea, why are you so lucky? Today, the army of the Phoenix clan is here. The destruction of the Dragon clan of the East Sea is a foregone conclusion. Do you think a small troublemaker can control your fate? You're really delusional." This sentence was not wrong. Although Yi Chen was good at fighting, he was just one person. Facing thousands of Phoenix clan experts, he was indeed powerless. On the other side, Xiao Longnu was also very anxious. Her heart was in her throat. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Yi Chen waved his hand and the Lava Dragon King suddenly appeared out of thin air. During this period of time, he had been locked in the small world by Yi Chen. He had been sullen for a long time. As soon as he appeared, he let out an earth-shattering roar in excitement. Although the Lava Dragon King was also a fire dragon, the Dragon clan was not a race. After discovering the battle here, he was so excited that his eyes turned red. He laughed strangely and said, "Master, these little birds with wings are so fat. Today, I'm going to have a good meal." Yi Chen snorted and said, "Cut the crap. There are many experts in this place. If you try to go up, you'll just be giving yourself to them. Spit fire immediately and cover the area within a radius of hundreds of miles in fog." Yi Chen didn't let him go up and fight. The Lava Dragon King immediately withered. He was very sullen in his heart. He had no choice but to suddenly open his mouth and spit out a mouthful of raging fire, which immediately swept around. Xiao Longnu, who had already received Yi Chen's signal, immediately waved her hand. Suddenly, the sea surface surged with huge waves. Under the leadership of Xiao Longnu, all the experts of the Sea Clan also stirred up wind and waves. The waves on the sea surface kept jumping up into the sky. After colliding with the Lava Dragon King's flames, a large amount of fog was immediately produced. These weapons shrouded the entire battlefield in the blink of an eye. The flames didn't stop and the fog didn't stop. Chapter 14-15. Moreover, the water mist carried an extremely high temperature, making these experts of the Phoenix clan unable to endure it. Those ordinary invitations suffered even more. They flapped their wings and flew higher. The experts of the Phoenix clan were also a little surprised. They didn't know what the other party was planning because this kind of trick couldn't cause any substantial damage to them. It was a pity that none of the people present could guess Yi Chen's intentions. Just as the entire battlefield was engulfed by the dense fog, the Netherworld Mantis team finally moved. Originally, these nether mantises were extremely difficult to discover when they hid in the void. However, to be safe, Yi Chen still decided to use the thick mist as a camouflage. Sure enough, when these nether mantises' huge butcher's knife came out of the void, the experts of the Phoenix clan didn't notice at all. By the time they noticed, it was already too late. Ah! Be careful! After 90,000 nether mantises with amazing lethality joined the battlefield, the army of the Phoenix clan was immediately unlucky. Countless experts of the Phoenix clan and Raptor clan were ambushed by the nether mantises. They suffered heavy casualties, and their corpses fell like raindrops. Yi Chen waved his hand and collected all the corpses of the Phoenix clan. The army of the Phoenix clan felt extreme danger. They desperately opened their eyes wide and looked around carefully. However, these nether mantises could appear and disappear unpredictably. In addition to the mist that filled the sky, it was like adding wings to a tiger. Once they were targeted by these nether mantises, their ending was basically doomed. In just a short time, these large groups of nether mantises suffered heavy casualties. The lethality of these 90,000 nether mantises was extremely shocking, especially now that even the smallest group had 300 to 500 members. Their killing efficiency was even more terrifying. Each of them was like the most precise killing machine. For a moment, the entire battlefield was filled with endless screams. The air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. Even the members of the Sea clan on the surface of the sea retreated in horror. They didn't understand what was happening in the mist. Small. The dragoness was also terrified, but Yi Chen didn't want her to stop, so she continued to stir up the waves. The Lava Dragon King also continued to spit out ferocious flames to create mist. The Golden Phoenix, who was fighting the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea, realized that something was wrong, but it was already too late. His ears were filled with the desperate and frightened cries of the Wind Clan's masters before they died. For a moment, this Golden Phoenix suddenly let out a long cry and roared decisively, "Phoenix Clan's army, retreat quickly." It had to be said that the Golden Phoenix was very decisive. In order to prevent losses, it gave the order to retreat. But it was still too late. Less than 30% of the Wind Race's army came out of the fog. In just a few breaths of time, millions of Wind Race soldiers had died. Furthermore, after these phoenixes narrowly escaped, they all trembled in fear as they looked at the blood-red and white mist shrouding the battlefield. The fog kept churning, as if some terrifying demon was hiding inside. At this time, Yi Chen also rushed to the sky and waved his hand to disperse the fog. When the scene inside was revealed, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. On the surface of the sea below the battlefield, countless phoenixes' corpses had been piled up like a mountain. As the waves rose and fell, the sea surface of tens of thousands of miles had been dyed red with blood. What was even more surprising was that when the fog dissipated, there was nothing inside, only Yi Chen and the Lava Dragon King. After the Lava Dragon King was told to move freely, it immediately cheered and rushed down from the sky, crazily devouring the phoenixes' corpses on the sea surface. The Golden Phoenix's eyes that were burning with flames suddenly shrank. She looked at Yi Chen with incomparable fear. Could it be that everything that happened just now was caused by this guy? He turned his head and glanced at the remaining phoenixes. They had lost their will to fight and were trembling. Obviously, they couldn't continue fighting. Therefore, the Golden Phoenix deeply memorized Yi Chen's image, then without saying anything, he turned around and left. All the experts of the sea race looked ahead in disbelief. Did they win? Could it be that these phoenixes left just like that? The East Sea Dragon King also sucked in a breath of cold air, then a warm smile appeared on his face. He quickly arrived in front of Yi Chen and bowed deeply, shouting, "Fellow Taoist, I will never forget your kindness for saving my life. You have saved the lives of all the creatures in the East Sea. This Dragon King solemnly apologizes for my previous actions. Please be magnanimous and don't lower yourself to the same level as me." At this time, Xiao Longnu flew over like a gust of wind, then intimately hugged Yi Chen's arm and said with a charming smile, "Father, why are you still saying this? If Brother Yi Chen is still angry, then why would he come to help? Now that Brother Yi Chen is very tired, why don't you quickly invite him back to the Dragon Palace to have a good rest?" When the East Sea Dragon King saw Xiao Longnu hugging Yi Chen's arm intimately, his eyebrows involuntarily twitched, but he quickly returned to normal. He also felt a little emotional in his heart. There were so many dragon children, but Xiao Longnu was the most sensible. If she didn't win over Yi Chen and help at the critical moment today, the outcome today was really unimaginable. Therefore, he pretended to pat his head and said with a smile, "I'm old and confused. Fellow Taoist, this way please." Yi Chen smiled slightly and didn't lower himself to the East Sea Dragon King's level. He followed him back to the East Sea Dragon Palace. As for the 90,000 nether mantises, they continued to stay on the surface of the sea and didn't leave. After all, he wasn't sure if the phoenixes would make a comeback. As for the countless corpses of the phoenixes, all of them had become the nourishment of the nether mantises. At this time, there was a sudden clap of thunder in the sky, and the roar of thunder resounded throughout the entire world channel. System announcement. Congratulations to player Yi Chen for successfully helping the East Sea Dragon King to defeat the Phoenix's vanguard, ruthlessly thwarting the Phoenix's spirit, tipping the scales of victory in favor of the dragons. He has obtained the friendship of the dragons. The player is rewarded with 100,000 innate attribute points and 3 million supreme grade immortal stones. Everyone, congratulate him. System announcement. The Primordial storyline has been activated. The war between the dragons, the phoenixes, and the Kirins is about to begin. All players, please choose your side. After the war between the three races ends, different levels of rewards will be given according to the player's performance. These two system announcements were broadcasted 3 times in a row in the World Channel, and the players were instantly excited. Chapter 14-16. The players had not been having a good time either. Due to the loss of their protection period, they were constantly being hunted down by the goblins and suffered heavy casualties. However, many experts were also born because of this. Moreover, players were constantly ascending from various novice areas in the lower realm. Now, the number of players in the entire Eldritch world had exceeded billions. The players were also a force that could not be ignored. Once all of them participated in this battle for supremacy, it was unknown who would emerge victorious. Brothers, do you see this? The Eldritch World storyline is finally about to begin. It's time for me to show my skills. I must shine in this battle for supremacy. From now on, I will leave everyone in the dust. You can look up to my back in the future. Stop bragging. You want to leave everyone in the dust? Didn't you see the system announcement just now? Guru Yi Chen has already participated in this battle? He even helped the Dragon Clan obtain the first victory. If you want to leave everyone in the dust, you have to surpass Guru Yi Chen first. Did you see that? The system announcement just now said that the scales of victory have already tilted towards the Dragon Clan. In other words, the Dragon Clan is very likely to win this battle. I'll choose the Dragon Clan first. That's not necessarily true. After all, this is only the first battle. There are too many factors that can affect the outcome of the battle. I don't think the Dragon Clan will win. I'll choose the Phoenix Clan. Come. Brothers who chose the Kirin Clan, gather. Let's form a team and fight side by side. We'll reach the peak of our lives. At this moment, Yi Chen had returned to the East Sea under the attentive guidance of the Dragon King of the East Sea. This time, the Dragon King of the East Sea's attitude had undergone a drastic change. He was extremely enthusiastic. The Dragon Palace was filled with all kinds of delicacies, gold and silver jewelry. However, Yi Chen's attitude towards the Dragon King of the East Sea was still somewhat perfunctory, and his attitude was slightly cold. This made the Dragon King of the East Sea very nervous. After all, he was also very clear that the Phoenix Clan's advance troops were just a vanguard, and the Phoenix Clan's main army had yet to arrive. If he didn't curry favor with Yi Chen now, and Yi Chen waved his sleeve and left, then the Dragon Clan of the East Sea wouldn't last long. The Dragon King of the East Sea rolled his eyes and said with a flattering smile, "Fellow Taoist Yi, I've collected a set of pretty good equipment by chance these years. Can you help me appraise it?" Yi Chen smiled, knowing that the Eastern Sea Dragon King was about to give him a gift. "Sure, I'm happy to help. As a result, the East Sea Dragon King clapped his hands. Prime Minister Turtle immediately led 3 seafolk experts in carrying 3 glittering treasure chests. The Prime Minister Turtle stood in a row in front of Yi Chen and opened the treasure chests. Suddenly, 3 pieces of 7-colored equipment appeared in front of Yi Chen. Yi Chen was stunned at first. Then, a smile spread across his face. He was all too familiar with these 3 pieces of equipment. They belonged to the great sage equal to heaven, Sun Wukong in his previous life. They were the golden chainmail, phoenix feather purple golden crown, and lotus silk cloud treading boots. The Dragon King of the East Sea saw that Yi Chen seemed to be very satisfied. He immediately smiled and said, "Why don't you try it on and see if it fits? If that's the case, I won't dare to disobey." Yi Chen didn't hesitate. He immediately put on the golden chainmail, phoenix feather purple golden crown, and lotus silk cloud treading boot. In an instant, Yi Chen felt that these 3 pieces of equipment were almost seamless with his body. It was as if they were tailor-made. Vaguely, a powerful force came from these 3 pieces of equipment. Yi Chen felt that his strength had increased by 20%. This was quite amazing. Moreover, after putting on this set of equipment, Yi Chen's appearance was also stunning. It was majestic, like a god descending to the mortal world. Xiao Longnu blushed and her big eyes were filled with red hearts. Yi Chen looked at his new appearance with satisfaction. He frowned and said to the East Sea Dragon King, "Old Dragon King, do you think that I'm still lacking something?" The East Sea Dragon King was dumbfounded. He subconsciously asked, "What do you still lack?" "I'm still missing a good weapon. My previous weapon was damaged in the previous battle. There are many treasures in the East Sea Dragon Palace. Can you pick a suitable weapon for me?" The East Sea Dragon King secretly cursed. He saw clearly that the Godslayer in Yi Chen's hand was an innate spirit treasure. How could it be damaged so easily? It was obvious that Yi Chen wanted to continue to ask for benefit. "Anyway, I've already given him the golden chainmail, phoenix feather purple golden crown, and lotus silk cloud treading boot. I might as well be generous to the end." The East Sea Dragon King waved his hand. "Prime Minister Turtle, go to the treasury of the East Sea Dragon Palace and pick a precious weapon for fellow Taoist Yi." Prime Minister Turtle bowed and retreated. Soon, he led 4 shrimp soldiers and crab generals into the Dragon Palace, carrying a weapon that was more than 20 feet long and shining with golden light. The East Sea Dragon King personally stepped forward and explained with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Yi, please take a look. This divine weapon is called the Heaven-Shaking Soul-Slaying Spear. It weighs about 6,000 kilograms and is made of deep-sea 10,000-year-old dark iron. It was forged over 49 days. One thrust of the spear will shake the heavens and the earth. It's really powerful. Do you think it's suitable?" Yi Chen glanced at it and curled his lips in disdain. This weapon called the Heaven-Shaking Soul-Slaying Spear looked good, but in fact, it was at most a supreme-grade divine weapon. He reached out and grabbed the Heaven-Shaking Soul-Slaying Spear in his hand. He casually waved it twice and threw it on the ground in disdain. "Old Dragon King, this weapon is too light. It's not easy to use. Do you have anything heavier?" The East Sea Dragon King was slightly stunned. This weapon weighed more than 5,000 kilograms. Yi Chen actually thought it was too light, so he immediately nodded and asked Prime Minister Turtle to take the Heaven-Shaking Soul-Slaying Spear away and pick another weapon. "Fellow Taoist Yi, please take a look. This divine weapon is called the Purple Gold Mace of Universe. It weighs about 9,000 kilograms and was forged over 81 days from extraterrestrial meteorite. There is no weapon that can break mountains. Fellow Taoist, please take a look and see if this weapon is suitable." Yi Chen shook his head and casually waved it twice. He directly threw the purple gold mace out of the East Sea Dragon Palace and said coldly, "It's still too light. Is this the only treasure in the East Sea Dragon Palace? Or Old Dragon King, are you looking down on me for not being willing to take out a good weapon?" The East Sea Dragon King immediately shook his head in panic and said, "Why would I look down on you? This is really the heaviest weapon in the East Sea Dragon Palace." Xiao Longnu's beautiful eyes suddenly flashed as she opened her mouth and said, "Father, don't we have a godly sea steadying needle in the Eastern Sea? It weighs about 13,500 pounds. Why don't we bring that weapon over and let big brother Yi Chen try it out?" Chapter 14-17. Yi Chen immediately looked at Xiao Longnu approvingly and gave her a satisfied look. Xiao Longnu immediately blushed. Old Dragon King said reluctantly, "But that godly sea steadying needle is an indispensable item for the stability of the East Sea. Once it leaves the East Sea, we will be in trouble." Xiao Longnu said unhappily, "Father's godly sea steadying needle may be precious, but it's not without a replacement. Why don't you think about it? Is it the Phoenix tribe's threat or the East Sea's trouble if we leave the godly sea steadying needle?" The Dragon King of the East Sea immediately came to his senses. Right now, the greatest threat to the East Sea Dragon tribe was the threat of the Phoenixes. Everything else was not a problem. After thinking it through, the East Sea Dragon King brought Yi Chen to the godly sea steadying needle happily. The Dragon King of the Eastern Sea even had a plan in mind. The sea-stabilizing godly needle was extremely huge. If Yi Chen could not bring it away, it would have nothing to do with him. When Yi Chen arrived, he looked at the indomitable godly sea-steadying needle. He was overjoyed. He flew up and circled around the godly sea-steadying needle 4 or 5 times. Then, he whispered, "Smaller, smaller." The Rui Jingu Bang instantly turned into a 2-meter-long rod that was as thick as a wrist. It automatically flew into Yi Chen's hands. It was neither light nor heavy and was just right. Yi Chen laughed heartily in satisfaction. He waved the Rui Jingu Bang in his hands and the waves in the East Sea started to surge. Yi Chen waved the Rui Jingu Bang in his hand and laughed happily, "Good treasure." After which, the Rui Jingu Bang turned into a silver needle and flew into Yi Chen's ear. After Yi Chen was satisfied, he said to Old Dragon King, "Old Dragon King, don't worry. I, Yi Chen, will take care of the East Sea. If the Phoenix tribe attacks again, just leave it to me. I'll make sure they don't return." After hearing Yi Chen's promise, the East Sea Dragon King finally heaved a sigh of relief. Although it was painful to give away so many treasures consecutively. However, he was satisfied that Yi Chen was willing to stay and help the East Sea Dragon tribe. Next, Yi Chen stayed in the East Sea Dragon Palace. The supreme-grade immortal stones required for cultivation were naturally endless. When he was tired from cultivation, Xiao Longnu would accompany him gently. In a few days, the relationship between Yi Chen and Xiao Longnu improved. Longnu's affection for Yi Chen was through the roof. On a dark night, Yi Chen kept Longnu. After a night of it, Longnu became his woman. As for the old Dragon King, he naturally turned a blind eye to all of this. Sure enough, 3 days later, the Phoenix clan's army, which still refused to give up, wanted to attack the East Sea again. Yi Chen, who knew about this in advance, set up an ambush. Under the attack of 90,000 nether mantises, the Phoenix clan army suffered heavy casualties. After leaving behind more than 10 million corpses, they fled in a sorry state again. This made the Phoenix army understand that the East Sea was a difficult bone to chew. They had no choice but to give up the East Sea. They could only bypass the East Sea and continue to attack the Dragon tribe. The Dragon King of the East Sea finally felt relieved. He didn't expect that the East Sea Dragon Palace could escape this disaster with Yi Chen. In the war between the Dragon tribe and the Phoenix tribe, the battle in the East Sea was undoubtedly the most dazzling. Originally, the strength of the East Sea Dragon Palace was not high. But unexpectedly, they fought the most beautiful battle. This made the Dragon King of the East Sea stand out in front of the ancestral dragon. The Dragon King of the East Sea was very friendly to Yi Chen. With the relationship with Xiao Longnu, I felt that Yi Chen was very likely to grow into the most powerful backer of the East Sea Dragon Palace in the future. So, he spared no effort to help Yi Chen improve his strength. One day, the Dragon King of the East Sea found Yi Chen and said to him with a smile, "Yi Chen, because the 2 battles we fought were too beautiful, the ancestral dragon specially rewarded me with a place to listen to his sermon. I'm too old and my talent is limited. But you have a promising future. I'll give this place to you. Go to Mount Buzhou and report to the ancestral dragon." Yi Chen's eyes lit up. He was surprised. This was a very rare opportunity. The reason why the 3 pure ones could become saints was that they had sat down and listened to Hongjuan's sermon. They understood the principle of the operation of heaven and earth. Although the ancestral dragon couldn't be compared with Hongjun, the ancestral dragon was a divine beast of chaos that was born after the creation of heaven and earth. Pan Gu created heaven and earth and his body turned into all things. The ancestral dragon was the most important treasure on Pan Gu's body. Moreover, the ancestral dragon's cultivation was unfathomable. He was infinitely close to the divine ancestor. Being able to listen to his sermon and comprehend things by analogy would be a great help to Yi Chen. Yi Chen wouldn't let go of this opportunity. Then, the Dragon King of the East Sea led him to Mount Buzhou. Yi Chen had been to Mount Buzhou once before. He didn't expect that he only saw the surface of Mount Buzhou. In fact, there was another world at the top of Mount Buzhou. If it wasn't for the Dragon King of the East Sea, Yi Chen wouldn't have been able to reach this place. This was the ancestral dragon's training ground. After arriving at the real top of Mount Buzhou, Yi Chen found that there were more than a dozen dragons that were over 100,000 meters long. These dragons' auras were extremely powerful. Each of them could easily crush him. However, Yi Chen kept his back straight and ignored the pressure. He was neither servile nor overbearing. Yi Chen resisted the pressure and climbed the stairs of Tianzhu Peak step by step. If he wanted to listen to the sermon, he had to climb to the top of Tianzhu Peak. An ancient black dragon that was over 100,000 feet in size stretched its huge head that was as big as a building. Its majestic voice rang in Yi Chen's ears. "You're the human who helped the East Sea Dragon tribe resist the Phoenix's attack, right?" Yi Chen nodded and said in a deep voice, "Yes, that's me." The ancient black dragon laughed and nodded with satisfaction. "Not bad. You are a man. I, Old Black, will be waiting for you at the top of Tianzhu Peak." Then, the ancient black dragon soared into the sky and went straight to the top of Tianzhu Peak. Yi Chen was not in a hurry. He climbed up step by step. The higher he went, the greater the pressure. When he reached the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, he finally saw a huge dragon that was flickering with golden light and filled with pressure. That was the ancestral dragon of the dragon race. Behind the ancestral dragon's huge head, there was a shining 7-colored halo of morality. On both sides of the ancestral dragon were more than a dozen ancient dragons, including the ancient black dragon, the ancient Fenglong, the ancient fire dragon, the ancient cloud dragon, the ancient coiling dragon. The ancestral dragon's golden eyes that could see through everything glanced at Yi Chen and said, "You must be the human kid who came to listen to the sermon. Take a seat at the side." Yi Chen nodded deeply. He chose a seat at the side and sat down. Chapter 14:18. Ancient Black Dragon, Ancient Inglong, Ancient Wind Dragon and other ancient dragons constantly scanned Yi Chen with their divine awareness. Ancestral Gragon's voice sounded in the minds of these ancient dragons. This time, the war between the Dragon Tribe, the Phoenix Tribe and the Kylan Tribe is not only about the fight for territory and resources, but also about the fight for fate. This is the key to whether our Dragon Tribe can survive for a long time. Black Dragon, what about the thing I asked you to investigate? Ancient Black Dragon said in a deep voice. Ancestral Gragon, according to my recent investigation, this Yi Chen appeared in the untainted land out of thin air. He is a mutant. and he has a good relationship with Goddess Nviwa. This time, it was Goddess Nviwa who asked him to help in the East Sea. In the past year, billions of mutants like Yi Chen have appeared in the untainted land out of thin air. But Yi Chen is the most powerful among them. What's more, Yi Chen has the Samsara dynasty. The ancient cloud dragon also said, I have heard about the situation of these mutants. Although they were very weak when they first appeared, the growth of this race is too fast, even faster than our dragon race, phoenix race, and Qilin race. Moreover, these mutants have more than one life. A few days ago, when the demon race chased after these mutants, there was a mutant who was killed by the same demon 3 times in a row, but he could still appear again. Ancestral Gregon was silent for a moment after hearing this, and then he said, The origin of these mutants is a mystery. Or rather, it is these mutants that we need to break the stalemate this time. Immediately pass down the order to recruit these mutants into our dragon tribe. If they can make contributions in the war, we will not be stingy with rewards. The ancient black dragon nodded and replied, Yes, Your Majesty. I will arrange these things immediately. In fact, in the past 2 days, more and more people have come to seek refuge. Our dragon race has already received more than 1 million people. Not only us, but even the Phoenix race and the Kirin race have also sent people to seek refuge. Yi Chen was keenly aware that the divine awareness around him was constantly touching each other. He guessed that the ancestral Gregon and these ancient dragons were discussing something. Perhaps it was related to him, but Yi Chen did not care. Anyway, he was here to listen to the ancestral Gregon's preaching. After the discussion with his subordinates, the ancestral Gregon said in a deep voice, I was born before the chaos, so I have my own understanding of the way of heaven. Maybe it is not suitable for you. But if you can learn something by analogy, the great Tao is the simplest way of heaven. If you can gain something, it will not be in vain. Ancestral Gregon began the preaching. Every time they had heard dragon clans preaching, they had had an ancient dragon. Although they had listened to the dragons preaching more than once, they had gained something. Every dragon Gregon. Yi Chen immediately focused and listened to the ancestral Gregon. Yi Chen was completely immersed in the preaching at the beginning. He found that the ancestral Gregon was really worthy of being a sacred beast of chaos born before the chaos. His understanding of the way of heaven had reached an unprecedented level. Yi Chen's mind was suddenly enlightened as he listened to the ancestral Gregon's preaching. In the past, when he was cultivating, he only knew that he had to cultivate according to the cultivation method. However, he did not understand why. With the ancestral Gregon's preaching, Yi Chen felt like the glass in front of him had been wiped clean. For a moment, Yi Chen was completely immersed. Moreover, the energy in his body was constantly colliding and reorganizing. Yi Chen's strength was constantly improving. The system prompt sounded continuously in his mind, reminding Yi Chen that he was constantly gaining experience and cultivation base due to the ancestral Gregon's preaching. However, Yi Chen didn't have the time to pay attention to them. Yi Chen felt that he had suddenly comprehended a new kind of cultivation technique. He was concentrating 120% of his attention, trying his best to organize and summarize it. Not all creatures could understand the ancestral dragon's Tao preaching. After an hour, those with weaker aptitudes began to feel dizzy. They couldn't listen any longer, or they would lose their minds. As time passed, more and more living beings left the range of the ancestral Gregon's preaching. After about a day, even the ancient dragon tribe members left one after another. Only Yi Chen was still sitting there with full concentration. A golden lotus flower appeared under him. As the ancestral Gregon preached, lotus flowers constantly revolved around Yi Chen's body. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Chen suddenly woke up. This time, the system prompt sounded in his mind at the same time. Congratulations! You have activated the first stage of the chaotic sacred body. Strength, stamina, speed, and reflexes have been doubled. Congratulations! The corners of Yi Chen's mouth couldn't help but reveal a trace of a smile after he saw the new attributes. This sacred body of primal chaos was very useful. Moreover, this was only the first layer. If his cultivation increased in the future, how many times would it increase after he cultivated to the 9th layer? With this, he would be more confident in challenging those of a higher level. At this time, Yi Chen did not know that his body was emitting tens of thousands of golden rays that pierced the sky. When the ancestral Gragon saw Yi Chen's strange phenomenon, he could not help but look at him. The ancestral Gragon was shocked. He never thought that Yi Chen would cultivate the chaotic sacred body while listening to his preaching. The ancestral Gragon often preached to his subordinates, but none of the ancient dragon tribe members had cultivated the chaotic sacred body. He did not expect Yi Chen, who was just an artist, to have cultivated the chaotic sacred body. Could this be the will of the heavens? The ancestral Gragon looked up at the sky and felt that the will of the heavens was becoming more and more unpredictable. The ancestral Gragon felt that a great danger was approaching. He was afraid that it would not be long before the entire untainted land ushered in an immeasurable calamity. In the immeasurable calamity, countless almighties would fall. However, the opportunity to help the dragon tribe escape this calamity fell on Yi Chen. Yi Chen stood up gratefully. He cupped his fists and said in a deep voice, "Thank you, Ancestral Gragon, for preaching to me. I have gained a lot this time. Yi Chen will definitely remember this." The ancestral Gragon smiled and said, "You don't have to thank me. All of this is your own opportunity. No matter how great your achievements are, it only shows that you are destined to be with the dragon tribe. In this case, I will help you again." After that, the ancestral Gragon gently raised his claw. Suddenly, a mass of green light went directly into Yi Chen's forehead. Yi Chen's body trembled. Suddenly, some new dragon tribe cultivation methods appeared in his mind, such as the art of traveling through clouds and summoning rain. This made Yi Chen very happy. In this way, his fighting strength was even more powerful. Chapter 14-19. Yi Chen thanked him again and again. After leaving Buzhou Mountain, he returned to Yuxiong Plateau and continued his closed-door cultivation. He needed to consolidate what he had gained this time. He also hoped to improve his sacred body of chaos to another level in a short time. After Yi Chen left, the ancestor dragon went to the ancient dragon clan for a meeting. He planned to go back to the place where he was born to do closed-door cultivation and find an opportunity to break the situation. On the other hand, Mount Buzhou was left with 2 ancient dragons to guard it. At the same time, the ancestor phoenix in the Phoenix Ridge of the Undying Mountain in the far west was furious. Who can tell me the background of that mutant called Yi Chen? He single-handedly made tens of millions of our Phoenix clan soldiers sink to the bottom of the sea. This is simply outrageous. At this time, a gentle middle-aged man stood up on the right side of the clan wind. He was Kong Xian, the ancestor of the Peacock tribe. He would be the famous Mahamayuri of the Buddhism sect in the future. He bowed slightly and said respectfully, "Ancestor, Yi Chen is not simple. He came to the untainted world a year ago. He is the emperor of the Samsara dynasty. All kinds of evidence show that his cultivation is only at the level of Daluo Jingxian, but he has created miracles. It is said that Yi Chen seized the innate spiritual root Gourd Ting from several demon fairies and escaped successfully. It is enough to prove that he is cunning." At this time, Kuanping of the 9th heaven stood out and said disdainfully, "What's so great about him? This dissimulated man is only at the level of Daluo Jingxian. I can kill him with one finger." Kong Xian shook his head and said, "That's not right. Your Highness, don't look down on these insignificant mutants. You should know that ants can bite an elephant to death. During this period of time, there are almost billions of mutants in the untainted world. If you add them up, this is a terrifying force. What's more, these mutants are growing too fast. I suggest that we recruit these mutants as soon as possible, and we only need to pay some insignificant rewards. The Ancestor Phoenix nodded and said to Kong Xian, "You are right. I will leave this matter to you. Recruit these dissimulated men as soon as possible. Defeat the Dragon Tribe and the Kylan Tribe as soon as possible. Kuanpeng of the Ninth Heaven, you have something to do. You have embarrassed us in the East Sea this time. We must regain our face as soon as possible." Kuanpeng of the Ninth Heaven rolled his eyes and suddenly laughed and said, "Isn't the Ancestor Dragon Ancestor at Tianzhu Peak of the Buzhou Mountain? Then let's just get rid of Tianzhu Peak." After saying that, Kuanpeng of the Ninth Heaven laughed and soared into the sky, disappearing. He went to find the water god Gonggong. Kuanpeng of the Ninth Heaven had known the water god Gonggong for a long time. He knew that the water god Gonggong was not doing well recently. Besides, the water god Gonggong was hot-tempered and easily impulsive. Kuanpeng of the Ninth Heaven instigated the water god Gonggong to be so angry that he almost lost his mind. He soared into the sky and crashed into Tianzhu Peak of the Buzhou Mountain. Although the Ancestor Dragon left two ancient dragons at Tianzhu Peak before he left, they obviously did not manage to stop the water god Gonggong from crashing into it in time. All they heard was a thunderous sound, followed by an earthquake, as if it was the end of the world. The two ancient dragon tribe members watched in horror as the heavenly pillar peak crumbled apart and collapsed. A black hole suddenly appeared in the sky. Tianzhu Peak was the pillar that connected the untainted world and the other space-time. After the collapse of Tianzhu Peak, it lost its barrier. Countless demons and monsters rushed towards the untainted world through the huge hole. In an instant, thousands of demons and monsters rushed towards the Buzhou Mountain. The living beings on the Buzhou Mountain were unlucky. They were attacked by the demons and millions of living beings died in the hands of these demons and monsters. The two ancient dragons knew that they were in trouble. They immediately gathered all the ancient dragons in the Buzhou Mountain and locked the demons and monsters in the other spacetime in the Buzhou Mountain. They did not allow them to break through the defense of the Buzhou Mountain. Now that the Ancestor Dragon was in seclusion, these ancient dragons would not dare to disturb him unless it was a matter of life and death for the ancient dragons. Left with no choice, these ancient dragons could only ask for help from Nuwa, who had a good relationship with the ancient dragons. Nuwa's territory was nearby. They immediately contacted Nuwa. When Nuwa heard that Tianzhu Peak of the Buzhou Mountain was broken and that demons and monsters were invading, she immediately became alert. She knew that this was not a trivial matter. She had to block the hole in the sky as soon as possible. While Yi Chen was in seclusion on the Yuxiong Plateau, he received a message from Nuwa. "Fellow Taoist Yi Chen, Tianzhu Peak of the Buzhou Mountain has collapsed. Now countless demons and monsters are invading the untainted world. Please come with me. We have to block the hole as soon as possible." Yi Chen's figure flashed and appeared beside Nuwa. He frowned and said, "What's going on? Isn't the Ancestor Dragon guarding the Buzhou Mountain? Who has the ability to break Tianzhu Peak?" Goddess Nviwa sighed and said, "The Dragon Ancestor has found a place to cultivate in seclusion. I don't know why Gonggong, the water god, went crazy and broke Sky Pillar Mountain. I need to fix the hole in the sky in the shortest time possible. I need you to seal the hole tightly so that no more spirit creatures from the other world can rush out." Yi Chen's heart skipped a beat. This actually triggered the plot of Nuwa mending the heavens. When Nuwa mended the heavens last time, he was not qualified to join. This time, he was fighting side by side with Nuwa. Yi Chen no longer hesitated. He opened the void with Nuwa and appeared in Buzhou Mountain. At this time, the Buzhou Mountain had become a ghost town. Countless netherworld chi constantly emerged from the hole in the sky and enveloped the entire huge Buzhou mountain. Yi Chen felt a little familiar when he saw the netherworld chi. Wasn't this the netherworld chi that the netherworld mantis and the others lived in the foggy swamp? He did not expect that a passage connected to Tianzhu Peak was the netherworld. He immediately summoned all the netherworld mantises. Compared to the safety of the East Sea, the threat here was obviously greater. Then Yi Chen and Nuwa noticed that the defensive formation of Buzhou Mountain had been fully activated. It locked the netherworld chi in Buzhou Mountain and did not let it continue to spread outside. The two ancient dragons were leading the warriors of the dragon clan to fight a bloody battle. However, they were struggling and retreating step by step. In the chi of the underworld, the strength of the entire dragon clan decreased by 20%. On the contrary, the strength of the demons in the underworld increased by 20%. Under such circumstances, the dragon clan was on the verge of collapse. Chapter 1420. Countless demons swarmed out of the huge black hole in the sky. When the two ancestral dragons saw Goddess Nuwa and Yi Chen, they immediately roared in surprise. "Boys, Goddess Nuwa is here to help us. Everyone must hold on." Although the two ancient dragons recognized Yi Chen and knew that he had listened to the ancestral dragon's teachings a while ago, Yi Chen's cultivation was obvious. The two ancient dragons did not think that Yi Chen could provide much help to them. They still pinned all their hopes on Goddess Nuwa. After all, Goddess Nuwa's strength was comparable to the ancestral dragon's. Since she was here, this go game should be resolved. Yi Chen did not care about the opinions of the ancient dragons. With a roar, he soared into the sky. He was wearing a golden chainmail, a purple phoenix feather crown, and a pair of lotus silk cloud treading shoes. Waving the Rui Jingu Bang in his hand, he single-handedly charged into the huge gap like a beam of golden light. Yi Chen's chaotic sacred body was completely stimulated at this moment. His body was shining with golden light. He looked like a majestic golden god. The Jingu Bang swept out like a windmill with the force of a thunderbolt. Suddenly, thousands of demons that had just rushed out of the hole were smashed into pieces. At the same time, Yi Chen also summoned the Lava Dragon King. After smelling this familiar scent, the Lava Dragon King let out a long roar towards the sky. Its body began to violently expand in an instant. The Lava Dragon King laughed and said, "Haha, it's too familiar. Isn't this the aura of the netherworld? I love the smell of these little bastards from the netherworld the most." After speaking, the Lava Dragon King suddenly opened its huge mouth and swallowed thousands of demons of the netherworld like a river. The Lava Dragon King's 10,000-meter-long body expanded rapidly and killed the demons of the netherworld crazily. At this time, the 900 nether mantises were all in place. They returned to the nether chi and were like fish in water, helping the ancient dragons to quickly kill the demons of the netherworld that had rushed out. Goddess Nuwa's body was also emitting a holy light. She was refining the most precious ores of the Eldritch continent. Colorful lights appeared in the sky. Yi Chen knew that this was the process of Goddess Nuwa refining the divine sky-mending stone. What he had to do was to let her do what she needed to do with peace of mind. Therefore, Yi Chen and the Lava Dragon King blocked the entrance of the netherworld. The Rui Jingu Bang could be long or short, big or small. In Yi Chen's hands, it had reached the pinnacle of perfection. These demons of the netherworld race were practically dead the moment they came into contact with it. The Lava Dragon King was even more carefree as it devoured countless demons of the netherworld. Its aura was constantly rising, and it was about to break through. Originally, the Lava Dragon King's cultivation had been stuck at the peak of the heavenly demon realm. Now it found an opportunity. Suddenly, the Lava Dragon King's body shook violently. Its body suddenly expanded to more than 20,000 meters, and its aura became extremely terrifying. The Lava Dragon King laughed heartily. It opened its mouth and spat out a blue flame. The demons blocking the crack were immediately burned to ashes. More demons were crying in the blue flame. Their bodies were smoking and they fell to the ground. It seemed that they were no longer alive. Yi Chen turned his head to look. The Lava Dragon King's huge head immediately turned and said flatteringly, "Ha ha, Master, I have recovered the strength of a demon immortal. You can rest for a while. Leave this place to me." Yi Chen nodded. He put away the Jingu Bang and retreated to the side, leaving the Lava Dragon King to handle this place. The Lava Dragon King's huge body coiled up like a mountain and blocked the exit. It opened its big mouth and spat out endless green flames, turning this place into a world of fire. As long as these demons rushed into the flames, they would be burned to ashes. The Lava Dragon King's green flames spread wider and wider. It was afraid that it would cover more than 100 kilometers of the whole. This place had become a zone of death. Before the Lava Dragon King ran out of energy, not a single demon would be able to make it here. At this moment, Yi Chen turned his head to observe. The nether mantises were like fish in water, appearing and disappearing unpredictably in the battlefield of Mount Buzhou. They were killing the demons of the nether realm with incomparable efficiency. This was also a great tonic for them. The demons that rushed out just now numbered in the tens of millions. These nether mantises had a full meal. With the addition of these nether mantises, there were no more reinforcements. The demons of the nether world were quickly wiped out under the joint attack of the ancient dragon clan. These nether mantises also retreated. After killing all the demons, they returned to the East Sea. After continuous battles with the Phoenix clan, the average size of these nether mantises had reached about 7,000 feet. Every single one of them was a colossus. Their jet-black bodies looked as if they were made of 10,000-year-old black iron. Their sharp blades flashed with a cold light. When 900 of these cold-blooded killers worked together, they would be able to kill even gods and Buddhas if they were to block their way. Yi Chen was still not satisfied. He thought that if these nether mantises could all grow to more than 10,000 feet, then the world would be big enough for him. At this time, Nuwa had already flown over with a huge divine stone shining with colorful light. She said to Yi Chen, "Taoist Yi Chen, you can ask your companions to stop attacking first. Leave this to me." Although the Lava Dragon King still wanted to continue, he did not dare to disobey Yi Chen's order. He obediently retreated to the side and shrunk his body to a few dozen feet long. He flew back and obediently sat at Yi Chen's feet. Nuwa had already flown into the sky with the colorful divine stone in her hand, blocking the edge of the huge hole. After an earth-shattering bang, the crack in the sky disappeared just like that. Nuwa was so tired that she was panting. She gently descended from the sky and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Then, Nuwa pushed two 5-colored divine stones, which were as tall as a person, in front of Yi Chen and said to him with a smile, "Taoist Yi Chen, these are the 2 remaining stones that I used to patch up the sky. They are no longer useful. Why don't I give them to you as a souvenir?" Yi Chen was pleasantly surprised. He immediately thanked her and accepted the 2 5-colored divine stones. He knew very well that these 2 5-colored divine stones were not simple. One of them gave birth to Sun Wukong, and the other was one of the top 10 divine artifacts, the Nuwa stone. He did not expect that both of them would become his this time. Chapter 1421. Hence, Yi Chen immediately placed the 2 pieces of 5-colored divine stones into his small world. However, he did not know when Sun Wukong would be born. At this moment, heavenly music suddenly sounded in the sky. Rays of 7-colored divine light descended from the sky and shone on Yi Chen and Nuwa. Yi Chen immediately felt a surge of merit energy entering his body. He instantly understood that Nuwa was bestowing merit energy. This time, his merit energy was on par with Nuwa's. It could be said that he had benefited from Nuwa's light. At this moment, a sudden clap of thunder sounded in the sky. The sound of thunder boomed across the entire world channel. System announcement. Congratulations to player Yi Chen for successfully helping Nuwa mend the heavens. Merit energy has been bestowed from the heavens. Player is rewarded with 2 million top-grade immortal stones, innate attribute points, and 200 years of cultivation. Players, please continue to work hard. In the World Channel, the players were even more confused. They were discussing fervently. What's going on? The plot of Nuwa mending the heavens has begun. Why didn't I know about it? This is too fast. It ended before we knew about it. I don't know when it started either. However, Yi Chen definitely knows about it. Why is he everywhere? I realize that he's always involved in good things. How did he help Nuwa mend the heavens? Did he help Nuwa dig the stones? There are so many people who are envious, jealous, and hateful. The power of merit that fell from the heavens is a good thing. Even those super powerful people in the Eldritch world covet it. It's a waste that Yi Chen obtained it. Everyone, I think we shouldn't bite off more than we can chew. Let's focus on what's in front of us. Haven't you noticed? Recently, whether it's the Dragon, Phoenix, or Kirin race, their attitude toward us players has changed. They've taken the initiative to recruit us. This is a huge improvement for us players. We must make these natives of the Eldritch world acknowledge our position and our strength. That's right. Brothers, we're not on the same side. We're all working for our own masters. Don't blame me for being merciless the next time we meet. Haha, you weakling. Bring it on. My sword is thirsty for blood. Yi Chen ignored the player's comments in the World Channel. Instead, he returned to the Yuxiong Plateau with Nuwa. Yi Chen took a tour around the Yuxiong Plateau. Seeing that the human tribe in the Untainted Land was developing well, he decided to leave. He had left the Reincarnation Dynasty for a period of time. It was time for him to go back and take a look. The war between the Dragon Tribe, the Phoenix Tribe, and the Kirin Tribe was about to begin. If the Reincarnation Dynasty was not fully prepared, they would be doomed eternally. Yi Chen had thought it through. Although he had chosen the Dragon race, he knew that the strength of an individual or a player could not change the outcome of the war between the Dragon race, the Phoenix race, and the Qilin race. After this war, the three tribes would no longer exist. Once the Reincarnation Dynasty was bound to the Dragon tribe, it would be a great loss. Therefore, he only needed to join in and reap the benefit. The Samsara Dynasty could never join in. When Yi Chen returned to the Reincarnation Dynasty, he immediately gathered his officials and made arrangements. After listening to Yi Chen's analysis, the officials and generals were full of admiration. They reported the development of the Reincarnation Dynasty to Yi Chen. Now, the Reincarnation Dynasty had 2 continents and hundreds of millions of residents. Moreover, due to the Demon Tribe's pursuit, a large number of players had joined the Reincarnation Dynasty. In the beginning, these players wanted to enjoy preferential treatment. However, after being purged by the Reincarnation Dynasty, they all became obedient. Those who were willing to stay followed the rules of the Reincarnation Dynasty step by step. It could be said that the Reincarnation Dynasty was thriving and developing. Yi Chen nodded with satisfaction. He said to the generals in a deep voice, "Now that the Eldritch land is not peaceful, we must stay calm. First, we must manage the 2 continents like an iron bucket. In particular, the strength of our soldiers must be improved as soon as possible." After making arrangements, Yi Chen set off again. This time, Yi Chen's destination was the Phoenix Tribe's nest, the Undying Mountain. Now, the Phoenix Tribe had released the news that they would select the best of the best. Once they passed the test, they would be qualified to sit down and listen to the Ancestor Phoenix's teachings. The players were excited. It was a great opportunity to be able to listen to the Ancestor Phoenix's teachings. They might be able to comprehend the peerless godly technique. Therefore, the competition was very fierce. There were 4 to 5 million players lining up at the foot of the Undying Mountain to join the Phoenix Tribe. When Yi Chen arrived, he saw such a scene. The line was already hundreds of miles away. Yi Chen did not have the patience to wait in line. He immediately flew towards the undying mountain. Suddenly, a player said unhappily, "Hey, what are you doing? Can't you see that everyone is lining up? What right do you have to cut the line?" Yi Chen laughed. "What right do I have? My strength is my qualification." As he spoke, Yi Chen suddenly waved his hand. Suddenly, the wind and clouds surged, and a heavy rain fell from the sky. Now, Yi Chen was very familiar with the art of traveling through clouds and summoning rain that the ancestor dragon had given him. He could control the weather with a wave of his hand. Suddenly, the millions of players were drenched in the heavy rain. All of them cursed angrily. However, Yi Chen did not care at all. He blew out another breath, and the temperature at the foot of the undying mountain suddenly dropped by dozens of degrees. The sky was cold and the ground was frozen. The players who had been soaked by the rain were instantly frozen into popsicles. Millions of players turned into millions of ice sculptures. This stunned the Phoenix tribe warriors who were maintaining order at the entrance of the undying mountain. They did not know how to deal with it. Yi Chen snorted and said, "What are you waiting for? I'm the only one left who wants to participate in the assessment. Why aren't you bringing me in?" The Phoenix tribe warrior shuddered and looked at Yi Chen in horror. This guy was too ferocious. With a wave of his hand, he turned millions of mutants into ice sculptures. From another perspective, this was a true super expert. The Phoenix tribe warrior immediately nodded and bowed as he welcomed Yi Chen to the Phoenix tribe's undying mountain to report. Yi Chen followed behind with his hands behind his back. He was not worried about exposing his identity. On the way here, he had used a small trick to change his appearance. Even if someone he was very familiar with stood opposite him, they might not be able to recognize him, let alone these phoenixes who had never seen him before. This time, not only did Yi Chen want to listen to the ancestor phoenix's preaching, but he also had other plans. Chapter 1422. Under the lead of the Phoenix clan's elite warriors, Yi Chen entered the undying mountain without any obstructions. Yi Chen also noticed that many players had successfully passed the test and entered. These players' standards were quite good. Some of them had even grown to the level of celestial immortals. This was already quite difficult. These players all had their heads held high and their chests puffed out. Each of them had a trace of arrogance. Yi Chen sneered in his heart and didn't talk to them. At this moment, in a magnificent and solemn palace at the top of the undying mountain, the ancestral phoenix was already sitting there and preaching. These players, as well as some of the Phoenix clan's powerhouses, were all sitting below with solemn expressions. They closed their eyes tightly and focused on understanding and integrating. The content of the ancestral phoenix's speech was easy to understand. Yi Chen quietly sized up the ancestral phoenix. At this moment, the ancestral phoenix had already transformed into a young human woman. Her charm was outstanding, and she was extremely charming. She was like a ripe peach. This made Yi Chen take a few more glances. He didn't expect the ancestral phoenix to be so beautiful after transforming. Yi Chen's eyes flickered. He had another plan for this plan. Next, he calmed down and carefully listened to the ancestral phoenix's speech. The ancestral phoenix's speech was completely different from the ancestral dragon's. In fact, it was easy to understand. Everyone's understanding of the heavenly Tao was different. However, the ancestral dragon and the ancestral phoenix could complement each other. The ancestral dragon leaned toward strength, while the ancestral phoenix was more delicate and had better control of details. When Yi Chen was completely immersed, he forgot everything around him. He tried his best to understand the content of the heavenly Tao, and his body emitted countless rays of light. This made the ancestral phoenix take a few more glances at him. Yi Chen also constantly listened to the notifications in his mind. His experience, cultivation, and combat strength were all rapidly increasing. After about 4 hours, the surrounding players had basically all left. With their strength, they couldn't stay here for too long because they couldn't understand at all. If they continued to listen, they would only go crazy. Other than a few mighty figures of the phoenixes, Yi Chen was the only one left. At this moment, Yi Chen suddenly heard a system notification in his mind. System notification. Due to your careful listening to the ancestral phoenix's preaching and understanding of the changes in heaven and earth, your chaotic sacred body has grown to the second stage. Your strength, physique, and reaction speed have increased by 2 times. Congratulations, player, please keep up the good work. Yi Chen's lips curled into a smile. His harvest this time was not bad. He also stood up, bowed respectfully to the ancestral phoenix, and then left the palace. Due to Yi Chen's good performance during the sermon, he was put in an important position. The ancestral phoenix also gathered these human elites and formed a sharp knife team. They were responsible for destroying the backlands of the dragon race and the Qilin race. Yi Chen was the leader of this team. Yi Chen was respectful on the surface, but he was secretly curling his lips. He didn't come to the Undying Mountain to fight for the phoenixes. He had a more important plan. This was because Yi Chen clearly remembered that in his previous life, during the Dragon Phoenix tribulation, the ancestral phoenix's strength suddenly decreased greatly. After later analysis, he found out that the phoenixes had given birth to an egg at this time, which was the golden-winged great eagle. The golden-winged great eagle was later the Buddha's uncle. The phoenixes giving birth to an egg was like nirvana rebirth. It would make their strength drop to the lowest point in their life. That was why the phoenixes plummeted during this great calamity. Yi Chen calculated the time. These few days were the time for the ancestral phoenix to give birth. His goal was to steal the golden-winged great eagle's egg. That was the golden-winged great eagle. After hatching and growing up, it would definitely bring him a great harvest. Of course, this was also a big risk. Once he was caught by the phoenixes, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, Yi Chen hid in the Undying Mountain and waited for an opportunity. Finally, one day, Yi Chen noticed that the fire attribute energy of the Undying Mountain suddenly became chaotic and violent. The entire Undying Mountain was also facing a great enemy. The defense was tight, especially the palace where the ancestral phoenix lived. The guards surrounded it so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Yi Chen knew that the opportunity had come. Tonight was the time for the ancestral phoenix to give birth to an egg. However, the palace was heavily guarded now, so it would not be easy to sneak in. In this way, he could only create some chaos for them. Yi Chen immediately used his divine sense to order the nether mantises lurking around the Undying Mountain to start moving. Immediately, the 900 nether mantises sneaked into the Buzhou Mountain and wreaked havoc. This time, their mission was not to kill, but to spread the commotion as much as possible and create chaos. Rumble. Following a series of earthquakes, many buildings in the Undying Mountain collapsed one after another. People were thrown off their horses everywhere. Cries shook the heavens and the earth, and blood filled the air. The phoenix warriors of the Undying Mountain were instantly enraged. Someone had actually sneaked into their lair, the Undying Mountain. This was the most serious humiliation to them. For a moment, team after team of phoenix warriors took action to encircle and annihilate the intruders. However, they underestimated the power of the nether mantises. Not only did they not calm the chaos, but the entire Undying Mountain became even more chaotic. There were battles everywhere, and smoke and dust were everywhere. There was even a miniature version of the Lava Dragon King setting fire everywhere. The warriors of the ancestral Phoenix Palace could not sit still anymore. More than half of them were transferred away, and now there was a gap. Seizing the opportunity, Yi Chen quietly hid his figure and sneaked into the ancestral Phoenix Palace without anyone noticing. At this time, There were 7 defensive formations set up in the palace. These formations had defensive, offensive, and reconnaissance functions. Once they were accidentally touched, all the Phoenix warriors would immediately know. As for breaking the formations, Yi Chen did not show any fear. He quietly released more than a dozen formation masters in succession. These formation masters easily helped Yi Chen break the formations. After Yi Chen sneaked in, he restored these formations, so it was impossible to tell from the outside that someone had sneaked in with ill intentions. After Yi Chen passed through layers of mechanisms, he appeared in the Ancestral Phoenix's bedroom without anyone noticing. At this moment, the Ancestral Phoenix was lying on the largest white jade bed, dripping with sweat. Beside her was a fiery red egg. That was the egg of the golden-winged Great Peng Eagle. Yi Chen was not in a hurry to go over. He was also quietly sizing up the Ancestral Phoenix. After laying eggs, the Ancestral Phoenix's aura was indeed extremely weak. The Ancestral Phoenix was only wearing a light veil. Her exquisite figure was faintly discernible, and her slender jade legs were exposed to the air. Chapter 1423. The corners of Yi Chen's mouth curled up into a sinister smile. He knew very well that although the Ancestral Phoenix laid eggs, it was a natural behavior of the Ancestral Phoenix to comprehend the power of the world. That was why she was still a woman who had never had a relationship with a man. Yi Chen had an idea. He wanted to use the ancient contract book to make the Ancestor Phoenix one of his contractors. If the contract was successful, wouldn't he be able to control the entire Phoenix race? Yi Chen flashed and appeared next to the Ancestor Phoenix's bed. He took out the contract book and tried to contract the Ancestor Phoenix. Just as Zhu Feng was on alert, she immediately felt dizzy. She felt as if the world was spinning around her. She was too weak and couldn't get up from the bed even after several attempts. The power of the ancient contract book was very mysterious, but the difference between Yi Chen and the Ancestor Phoenix was too big. Yi Chen tried to contract the Ancestor Phoenix a few times, but he failed every time. Just as Yi Chen was about to give up and leave with the gold wing eagle egg, the Ancestor Phoenix suddenly opened her eyes. She looked at Yi Chen and asked, "Who are you? Why are you in my room?" Yi Chen was so scared that cold sweat began to drip down his forehead. If the Ancestor Phoenix called out, countless Phoenix warriors would rush in. When that happened, he wouldn't be able to escape. Yi Chen's mind was spinning fast, and he was thinking of other excuses. But at this moment Yi Chen saw the Ancestor Phoenix's clear eyes. She was like a little girl who didn't care about the world. Yi Chen's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that this was the ancient contract book? After the contract failed, the Phoenix ancestor suffered a backlash? So, Yi Chen said tentatively, "Wife, I'm your husband and you're my wife. Don't you recognize me?" The Ancestor Phoenix's eyes flashed with confusion. She looked at Yi Chen with uncertainty and asked, "Are you my husband? How come I don't remember? I only feel dizzy and weak." Yi Chen was happy and took the opportunity to sit next to Zhu Feng. He placed his hands on her delicate shoulders and gently massaged her. "Wife, don't force yourself. If you can't remember, then don't think about it. You have been too tired recently. Sleep, then you will remember everything." Zhu Feng was obviously not used to being so close to a strange man. She resisted twice. However, Yi Chen's hands were strong enough to hold her in his embrace. Moreover, Yi Chen's manly aura was very pleasant to Zhu Feng's nose, so she no longer resisted. Then Yi Chen waved his sleeve, extinguishing all the candles in the palace. For a time, Yi Chen forced himself upon the Ancestral Phoenix in a situation where she was half unwilling and half willing to comply. He was rolling around and sweating profusely. After Zhu Feng was sweating profusely, she fell asleep. Yi Chen got up from her body. Yi Chen's eyes were as bright as the stars, and his heart was thumping with excitement. Just a moment ago, the system notification rang out in his mind. System announcement: Congratulations! Player has obtained the Ancestor Phoenix's first drop of blood. Combined with a lot of sky power, the Chaos Holy Body has reached the 3rd level. Strength, stamina, and reaction speed have increased by 3 times. Congratulations, player. Please keep up the good work. Yi Chen was so excited that he clenched his fist. Who would have thought that he would obtain the Ancestor Phoenix's first drop of blood? He looked at Zhu Feng's sleeping face with some reluctance, then quietly went down. Originally, the safest thing to do now was to kill her before she could resist, but Yi Chen couldn't just pull up his pants and turn his back on her. It wouldn't be long before the Ancestral Phoenix woke up. Yi Chen didn't dare to stay here for too long. He placed the great golden-winged eagle's egg into his small world and left silently along the same path he came from. At the same time, he ordered the hell mantises that were causing trouble in the Undying Mountain to quickly retreat. The Undying Mountain managed to quell the chaos. Although there were casualties, they were not injured at all. Some of the almighty figures of the Undying Mountain were puzzled. It seemed that these invaders did not deliberately kill, but instead they wanted to cause trouble. However, they did not know what their goal was. At the same time, these almighty's faces changed. Their bodies flashed, and they reappeared outside the Phoenix's palace. After they felt the Ancestor Phoenix's calm aura, they all sighed in relief. It seemed that they did not come for the Ancestor Phoenix. This was really strange. The next day, the Ancestor Phoenix woke up late in the morning. She felt a splitting headache, and her body was about to fall apart. It was as if she had been severely tortured. Suddenly, the Ancestor Phoenix's face changed. She lowered her head and saw a dark red blood stain on the white bedsheet. When she turned her head again, she found that the golden-winged eagle's egg was gone. Suddenly, the Ancestor Phoenix's face changed greatly. She immediately remembered. Last night, when she was at her weakest, a black-clothed man invaded her bedroom. She did not know what kind of method he used, but her mind was in chaos. She was actually tricked by this black-clothed man into calling him husband. Moreover, she was taken advantage of. The Ancestor Phoenix gnashed her teeth in hatred. Her anger almost ignited the entire Undying Mountain. This damned guy not only took her first drop of blood, but also her child. If she knew who that guy was, she would pull out his tendons and skin him alive. The Ancestor Phoenix vaguely remembered that this guy was a human. Then, the number of casualties was these new mutants. However, she did not know who was so daring. The Ancestor Phoenix did not say what happened in the palace. She only ordered to investigate all the new mutants that joined the Phoenix clan. At this time, he had already appeared thousands of miles away from the Phoenix clan. In his hand, he held the golden-winged eagle's egg that was flickering with red light and emitting surging heat. A system notification sounded in his mind. Congratulations to the player for obtaining the quasi-sage mount, the golden-winged eagle. Do you want to hatch it? Yi Chen immediately chose no. This was the most sensitive period. If he hatched the golden-winged eagle now, wouldn't he become a live target for everyone? He would wait until this gust of wind passed. In any case, the golden-winged eagle could not fly away in his hands. However, Yi Chen knew that the Phoenix clan would find out about him sooner or later. But by then, he would have flown far away. At this time, Yi Chen's strength had increased by a lot. Although his cultivation was still at the Daluo Jinxian, his strength and stamina had far surpassed that of an ordinary Daluo Jinxian. The power that the chaotic sacred body could increase was too great. Chapter 1424. Just as Yi Chen was hurrying on his way, he suddenly heard the sound of an intense battle ahead. Yi Chen looked down from the sky and immediately saw several thousand players with neat equipment besieging a majestic fire qilin. These players didn't belong to any faction and were independent demon hunt squads. In the great desolate continent, players like this were everywhere. Seeing this fire qilin, Yi Chen immediately recalled that in his previous life, there was indeed such an incident. The Fire Qilin clan's vanguard was besieged and killed by a group of mutants. After the leader of this demon hunt squad killed the Fire Qilin, not only did he obtain the Fire Qilin's essence blood, he also obtained the most precious Qilin arm. From then on, his strength rapidly increased and he became a famous expert among all the celebrities. The Qilin arm was indeed extraordinary. Even Yi Chen was somewhat envious of it. Since he caught up with it, he naturally wouldn't miss it. Yi Chen stayed in the sky and watched for a while. He discovered that although the strength of these several thousand players wasn't high, they were very evenly distributed. The weakest among them was an Earth Immortal, while the few commanders were Celestial Immortals. Their equipment was uniform, and they should be among the best among all the players. At this moment, they formed an offensive formation together. Their attack power was boosted and they surrounded the Fire Qilin. The tactic they used was to constantly disturb the Fire Qilin and consume its energy. When the Fire Qilin was tired, they would attack it together. The Fire Qilin they were facing clearly had the cultivation of a demonic god. If it was during normal times, even if they had 10 times the number of people, they wouldn't necessarily be a match for the Fire Qilin. However, this Fire Qilin's current state was quite abnormal. It was extremely weak, which was why it was evenly matched with this group of Demon Hunt Squad players. After some observation, Yi Chen discovered some clues. This Fire Qilin was poisoned. A layer of fishy smell and a faint green fog pervaded the Fire Qilin's body. It was this poisonous gas that made the Fire Qilin weaker and weaker. According to Yi Chen's calculations, this Fire Qilin could at most last for 4 more hours before it became extremely weak. It wouldn't be able to stand steadily and would be beaten to death by this group of players. It seemed that there were poison experts among these players. Fire Qilin was careless and fell into their trap. Hence, Yi Chen descended from the sky and landed beside the group of players. These people immediately became vigilant. They looked at Yi Chen. A tall player carrying a sledgehammer walked out of the group and said to Yi Chen with an unfriendly expression, "What are you doing? Bution Pavilion is handling matters here. Those who have nothing to do with this, quickly scram." When he heard this, he immediately frowned and said with a bit of annoyance, "Such big words. You dare to call yourselves Bution Pavilion? Who gave you the courage? I'm not going to waste my breath with you. This Fire Qilin is mine. Hurry up and scram." Yi Chen waved his hand and 100,000 top-quality spirit stones appeared next to the big man. Yi Chen said indifferently, "I won't take advantage of you. These top-quality spirit stones are your compensation. Hurry up and scram." The big man on the other side laughed as if he heard a funny joke. He looked at Yi Chen as if he was looking at an idiot. However, when he turned to look at the pile of top-quality spirit stones, his eyes flashed with greed. At this time, dozens of players rushed out from the group. One of them impatiently said, "Old Lu, what are you dawdling over there for?" The big man laughed and put away the 100,000 top-quality spirit stones with a wave of his hand. Then, he pointed his hammer at Yi Chen and said to his companions behind him, "Brothers, our luck today is not bad. Other than this Fire Qilin, there is actually a fat sheep that came to our door. This brat has plenty of money. He took out 100,000 top-quality spirit stones and wants us to give up the Fire Qilin. Don't you think this is funny?" Yi Chen's companions behind him immediately laughed out loud. They surrounded Yi Chen with unfriendly expressions on their faces. One of them shook his head and said, "This brat looks quite spirited. Unfortunately, he is an idiot. I won't talk to you anymore. How many good things do you have on you? Hand them all over. Don't think about self-destructing and returning to the city. Your brother's blade is faster than your speed." Yi Chen smiled and said coldly, "You took my money and still want to kill my people. It seems like you are not a group of good people. Since it is like this, I don't have any psychological burden." As he spoke, the Rui Jingu Bang suddenly appeared in Yi Chen's hand. Then, a gust of wind blew. The dozens of players surrounding him did not even have time to react before they were smashed into meat paste by the Rui Jingu Bang. Then, Yi Chen rushed into the sky. Suddenly, he flicked his finger and a white light fell right into the fire Qilin's mouth. In that instant, the fire Qilin suddenly became spirited. The green mist on its body quickly disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. The fire Qilin's aura also rose along with it. Suddenly, the faces of the members of the organization called Chu Tian Pavilion changed. One of the leaders gritted his teeth and turned to look at Yi Chen and roared, "Damn it, you dare to play dirty tricks on us. We, Bu Tian Pavilion, will remember this." Yi Chen coldly snorted and ignored them. Meanwhile, the fire Qilin finally recovered to its peak and began to madly retaliate. The thousands of players were thrown off their feet. The fire Qilin spat out a mouthful of flames and hundreds of players were burned to ashes. These players were frightened and fled in all directions. However, they could not outrun the fire Qilin and were all killed by the fire Qilin one by one. Then, the fire Qilin stood in front of Yi Chen with an ominous glint in its eyes. Those sharp teeth flashed with a cold light as if they were going to bite someone at any time. The fire Qilin's mouth continuously dripped with blood. At this moment, this fire Qilin was extremely ferocious. Yi Chen coldly laughed and said, "What? Do you want to make a move against me? Is this how a beast like you treats your savior?" The fire Qilin roared in a low voice, "You damned humans, none of you are good. Lowly ants, it is your fortune to be eaten by me. Just obediently accept your death." Yi Chen laughed and pointed the Rui Jingu Bang in front of him and said, "Beasts will always be beasts." Repaying kindness with enmity and still speaking so confidently. "Do you know why I helped you get rid of the poison?" "Why?" Yi Chen roared and said, "Because after being poisoned, you are as weak as trash. Fighting you is not satisfying at all." After speaking, Yi Chen rushed into the sky and raised the Rui Jingu Bang in his hand. He smashed it down towards the fire Qilin. Chapter 1425. Yi Chen did not use his own cultivation. Instead, he used all of his physical strength. He also wanted to know how strong his chaotic holy body would be after it was upgraded to the third level. The Rui Jingu Bang in Yi Chen's hand suddenly created a gust of wind as it smashed towards the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin was instantly enraged. It rushed towards Yi Chen crazily. With a loud bang, the Rui Jingu Bang and the fire Qilin collided violently. With a loud bang, the fire Qilin retreated 6 to 7 steps. Yi Chen's body also swayed a few times. Yi Chen's eyes shone with excitement. He laughed and said, "Awesome. Let's continue if you have the gut." After saying that, Yi Chen continued to brandish the Rui Jingu Bang and collided with the fire Qilin. The battle between the two of them did not have any superfluous moves or complicated technique. It was just a simple head-on collision. After a few hundred rounds, the fire Qilin could not take it anymore. It suddenly realized that the strength of the human in front of it was incomparably terrifying. Its bones were about to be smashed apart by the Rui Jingu Bang. It turned around and wanted to escape. However, Yi Chen's speed was much faster than it. No matter which direction it fled in, Yi Chen would always appear in front of it accurately and pounce on it with the Rui Jingu Bang. After a few thousand rounds, the fire Qilin let out a wail. It fell from the sky covered in blood and lay motionless on the ground. At this moment, the fire Qilin's body did not have a single complete bone. All of them were smashed apart by Yi Chen. Yi Chen was also sweating profusely. This battle was really exhilarating. He had also become more familiar with the use of strength. The Rui Jingu Bang was like an extension of his arm in his hand. Yi Chen had also discovered that ever since he had cultivated the chaotic sacred body, he preferred this kind of straightforward battle. He felt that the Rui Jingu Bang was sometimes more useful than the Godslayer. After the fire Qilin was killed, it dropped 2 items. One was the extremely precious Qilin blood essence, and the other was the Qilin arm. At this moment, a sudden clap of thunder rang out in the sky. The sound of thunder boomed across the entire world channel. System announcement. Congratulations to player Yi Chen for successfully slaying the Fire Qilin and obtaining the Qilin Blood Essence and Qilin Arm. An additional 1 million top-grade Immortal Stones will be awarded to the player. Please continue to work hard. The system announcement rolled across the world channel 3 times in a row, and all the players were shocked. This was the highest cultivation level that the Dragon race, Phoenix race, and Kirin race had ever lost. The players had all heard of the Fire Qilin. He was a demonic god, and countless players had died at his hands. Today, he was finally killed. As expected of great god Yi Chen. He is indeed powerful. Even the Fire Qilin was killed by him. I worship the great god. Isn't that nonsense? Almighty Yi Chen has always been good at creating miracles. I'm so angry. Fellow players, I want to expose the truth. Yi Chen is despicable and shameless. He doesn't deserve to be called a great god. He actually shamelessly stole our kill. We, Butian Pavilion, declare that we cannot coexist with him. When the players heard this, they immediately became excited. They all left messages in the World Channel asking, "What's going on? Whose kill did great god Yi Chen steal?" I am one of the commanders of Butian Pavilion. Originally, the Fire Qilin was our Butian Pavilion's. We had been following him for 5 days, and finally found a chance to poison the Fire Qilin. The Fire Qilin's strength was greatly reduced, and it was already ours. Who knew that Yi Chen would suddenly appear and detoxify the Fire Qilin, causing all of our Butian Pavilion members to be instantly killed by the Fire Qilin? Everyone, please recognize Yi Chen's shameless face. Butian Pavilion, this isn't right. You said that you poisoned the Fire Qilin, and then great god Yi Chen detoxified it. Then how did the Fire Qilin get killed? That's right, that's right. Great god Yi Chen is not an idiot. Why would he do something so troublesome? He could have just killed you all and then killed the Fire Qilin. Wouldn't that have saved him a lot of trouble? His story doesn't look like it at all. Haha, from what I see, these guys from Butian Pavilion just want to ride on his coattails. They want to scam him. For a moment there were all kinds of things being said in the World Channel. No one believed what the players from Butian Pavilion were saying. The players from Butian Pavilion were so angry that they wanted to vomit blood. They also did not understand why Yi Chen wanted to detoxify the Fire Qilin first. Was there something wrong with his head? Unfortunately, how could these players know that Yi Chen just wanted to fight a big battle with the Fire Qilin? At this time, Yi Chen was repeatedly playing with a pair of Fire Qilin arms. Fire Qilin arms, acquired spirit treasure equipment. After equipping it, it can increase strength by 200%, speed by 200%, and stamina by 200%. Yi Chen laughed loudly. This was really a set of battle equipment. In his eyes, even though the Fire Qilin arms was an acquired spirit treasure, it was still much stronger than some innate spirit treasures. The most important thing was that Yi Chen's sacred primal chaos physique increased strength and speed. After equipping the Fire Qilin arms, it was like adding wings to a tiger. Just as the players were gaining a foothold in the great desolate world, they also attracted the attention of the super powerful beings. Even the 3 Pure Ones noticed these mutants descending from the sky. With the 3 Pure Ones' great abilities, they already knew in advance that the great desolate world would soon face a calamity. At that time, even these super powerful beings would not be able to escape, and the key to solving this calamity was these mutants. Therefore, Taishang Laojun, Yuanshi Tianzuan, and Tongtian sect leader all ordered their disciples to go down the mountain and find those mutants with great opportunities to become their disciples and join their Taoist sections. Among them, Yuding Zhenren, a disciple of Yuanshi Tianzuan, also went down. Yuding Zhenren was one of the 12 Golden Immortals, the master of Yang Jian, and Jiang Zia's senior brother. Yuding Zhenren's disciple was quite picky. He had been wandering around the great desolate world for a long time, but none of the mutants could catch his eye. He was not satisfied with any of them. During this period of time, Yuding Zhenren kept hearing these mutants talk about one name, which was Yi Chen. This Yi Chen was the object of worship of all the mutants, so Yuding Zhenren became very interested in Yi Chen. Yuding Zhenren happened to meet Yi Chen after he killed the Fire Qilin. Yuding Zhenren was very satisfied with Yi Chen's strength. If he could take him as his disciple, Yuan Shi Tianzuan would be very happy. So Yuding Zhenren directly caught up with Yi Chen and shouted behind him, "Fellow Taoist, please wait." Yi Chen was stunned for a moment. Then he turned around and looked at Yuding Zhenren, asking coldly, "What can I do for you?" You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.